Chapter 3675. Ning Shu. Why should I be sad? The one who was in trouble was Grand-Uncle, not her. At most, she would help Grand-Uncle regain his honor. Everyone would encounter trouble, and Grand-Uncle was the same. She would help Grand-Uncle regain his honor. As for Grand-Uncle's problem, if he could not solve it himself, no one else could. It was a pity that she could not see Grand-Uncle's current situation. He was probably covered in tattoos. Aristocrat Shamate, love was sugar, so sweet that it was sad. Ning Shu was very curious about what those black patterns were. It seemed to have great power, but why was Grand-Uncle suppressing it? Ning Shu held Fa Tian's hand and walked out of the consultation room. After thinking about it, he brought Fa Tian to the Sea of Law. He did not know if the energy bodies he found before were thrown into the Sea of Law. When he reached the Sea of Law, he saw Li Guo and the rest were still purifying. Ning Shu, he suspected that Li Guo and the rest were enslaved and had to purify the Sea of Law for their entire lives. Fa Tian covered his nose and said, "It smells a little." Ning Shu, you can smell it? She really could not smell it at all. She looked at the Sea of Law. It looked dirty and sticky, so it should have a stench, but she could not smell it. Most probably, all the living beings in the void could smell it. After all, Fa Tian was a connate cardinal treasure. Ning Shu squatted down and extended his hand into the Sea of Law to sense it carefully. He even scooped up the seawater, but he could not as it slipped away from his fingertips. His hand was empty and dry. It was a sea, but it was not water. As the will of death, it was very sensitive to death. The Sea of Law had death aura and no life force. Ning Shu had never seen a normal Sea of Law and did not know what color it was. It might be black, but it might not be black. What should he do with this Sea of Law? Death was the fate of every living being. It was not even the final destination of a living being. As powerful as the Sea of Law and the plane, they could not escape death. I can do it. No, she couldn't. Her consciousness couldn't escape the fate of death. If this consciousness of hers disappeared and a new one was born, it wouldn't be her anymore. It would be a brand new individual. It was just like rebirth. The only difference was that she could rebirth infinitely. Grand-Uncle was no longer standing guard beside the Sea of Law. His situation was probably quite serious. Li Guo finished the purification and returned to the shore. She breathed a sigh of relief and said to Ning Shu with a bad face, "Can you tell Grand-Uncle that I'm going back?" Ning Shu said directly, "Go by yourself." She and the senior uncle were blushing now. They didn't want to talk to each other. If they wanted to ask, they could ask by themselves. Li Guo said impatiently, "I really want to leave." Ning Shu, "Then leave." Li Guo sighed. "If I leave, he'll run to my clan again and make me start purifying again. I'm going crazy." Ning Shu was silent. It sounded like the Grand-Uncle's way of doing things. Ning Shu said, "Then continue to purify." Other than purifying honestly, what else could he do? Moreover, Ning Shu felt that the senior uncle wouldn't be able to get rid of Li Guo and the others for a while. Li Guo looked at Ning Shu from the corner of her eyes. "Aren't you tired? You can try." "Ning Shu, I don't know how to purify." Li Guo didn't want to talk to Ning Shu anymore. She turned her eyes and saw Fa Tian. Her eyes lit up. "What's your relationship with this child?" Ning Shu saw Li Guo's eyes turn green and was shocked. "Damn, you're too crazy. You won't even let the child go." Fa Tian was still a child. "Li Guo, what's wrong with the child?" The child was also very strong. Strength had nothing to do with appearance. Ning Shu was even more shocked. "What's wrong with the child?" "The child." Ning Shu pushed Fa Tian behind her. "Don't have any ideas about my child. He's not your child. This child obviously has the smell of a void creature. Li Guo directly exposed Ning Shu. Ning Shu, she's a void creature. What's wrong with that? Li Guo squatted down and smiled gently at Fa Tian. Little brother, what's your name? Fa Tian was expressionless. I don't know. Li Guo was embarrassed for a moment, but she still smiled and said, do you want to come to my tribe to play? Ning Shu, you're digging the bottom of the wall too rudely. And it sounded very familiar. Li Guo had invited her and said the same thing. She was so straightforward that she didn't even change her words. Fa Tian looked serious. No. Li Guo's face trembled. There are many fun things in my tribe. Don't you want to go? Fa Tian was a little impatient. No. Li Guo still wanted to say something, but Ning Shu said, it's time for you to purify. Good luck. Ning Shu held Fa Tian's hand and left. Why did people think about Fa Tian wherever they went? Go and be jealous. Li Guo looked at Fa Tian's back and felt very regretful. She said to the old woman beside her, I really want to snatch that child back. The old woman said, just think about it. It was a little dangerous to snatch things in the Taishu's territory. Unless it was in the void, then so be it. Li Guo said angrily, this woman really doesn't know what's good for her. The old woman didn't say anything. She just listened to the tribe leader's complaints. If the tribe leader really did something extreme and affected the tribe, she would definitely remind her. Fa Tian grabbed Ning Shu's finger and looked up at Ning Shu. I won't go with others. Ning Shu nodded. I know. Fa Tian said seriously, I'm serious. Ning Shu nodded and said seriously, of course I believe you. Fa Tian was a little happier. Ning Shu gently pinched his face and said, don't be unhappy. People think about you because you're powerful. You should be happy. Fa Tian touched his face. Don't touch my face. As a void creature, my face is inviolable. Ning Shu smiled. Who said that? Fa Tian, little mouse. Ning Shu, he doesn't even have a face. Fa Tian, anyway, don't touch my face. Ning Shu nodded and said, I won't touch our Fa Tian's delicate face in the future. In the future, Fa Tian will rely on his face to make others die. One big and one small, walking in the vast and boundless void, getting further and further away from the black sea of law. Back in the system space, Little Mouse was bored to death. When he saw Ning Shu and Fa Tian, he asked, where did you guys go? Why are you only back now? He left them in the system space and then these two went out to have fun, hee. Little Mouse was like a lonely woman who was alone in her boudoir, feeling wronged and lonely. Ning Shu, Fa Tian and I are going to the void. Little Mouse, oh. Silence. More silence. Ning Shu, you can come with us. Little Mouse, why did you take so long to ask me to come with you? Little Mouse jumped onto Fa Tian's head and lay on his head. Ning Shu was going to the void. This time, he planned to go further. Chapter 3677. Ning Shu nodded. Let's walk a bit more. Little Mouse shook its head. We can't walk any further. We've already walked a long way. Ning Shu asked, is it really that far? Why do I feel like we haven't walked that far? Little Mouse glanced at her. You just haven't found what you want and you're not satisfied. We really can't go any further. Ning Shu asked, is there any danger ahead? Little Mouse sighed like an old man. You know nothing about power. Don't tell me you think that's all there is to the void. Little Mouse pointed at the deep darkness ahead and said, the void creatures ahead are very dense and very powerful. Ning Shu asked, why are there so many races in that place? Little Mouse thought for a while. If I have to make an analogy, that place is a city and we're in the countryside. Ning Shu said, "Damn, you're making us sound so lowly. Don't go, it's too dangerous. They can kill me with a slap. I'm like a mosquito. You can't imagine my power." Little Mouse shook its head. Ning Shu frowned. "You're saying that the creatures there are very dense and more powerful. Is there a market? Will there be something I need?" Little Mouse was speechless. "You're focusing on the wrong thing." Ning Shu wanted to enter the city. Country people were very eager to enter the city. What a beautiful world it was. Little Mouse was a little irritated. "I'm not going." Even when he had subordinates, he would deliberately avoid such places. "And we can't enter," Little Mouse said. Ning Shu nodded. It seemed that the void creatures also had places where they gathered. He really wanted to go. Ning Shu asked, "Is there any way to go?" Little Mouse said firmly, "There's no way." Ning Shu asked, "Why are you so sure?" Little Mouse was even more annoyed. "Why are you asking so many questions?" Ning Shu was stunned for a moment. He suddenly understood that the little mouse belonged to the category of pests, especially now that it was in the form of a mouse. Everyone wants to beat a rat crossing the street. The little mouse devoured energy bodies and gnawed on some life planes. Even if the living beings in the void didn't care about those life planes, to them, they were nothing more than a leaf, or even a grain of sand. They didn't care at all. However, things like energy bodies were very important. If the little mouse secretly ate energy bodies for no reason, he would definitely kill it if he could. After the energy body was born, it was bitten by the little mouse in an unknown corner. "Don't you think it's hateful?" Ning Shu asked again, "Isn't there anything good that can increase my potential a little?" Her current strength could be increased. Against another mission enforcer, she definitely had an absolute chance of winning. She had the holy whip, the will of death to take damage for her, and the filthy things of the 7 emotions and 6 desires. A drop of it could pollute the soul. She had reached the peak of the soul mission enforcer and couldn't break through anymore. However, Ning Shu felt that it was inevitable that she would have to deal with the creatures of the void in the future. This feeling was like she was a martial arts master and the creatures of the void were gods. There was no comparison at all. Even if a strong soul would increase her strength, it was still the same in the end. She needed to break through the shackles and have a qualitative change. The little mouse said, "No, do you really think that there's something in the world that can increase one's strength by Yubiu?" Ning Shu said, "This is the void, not the world. Besides, I don't want to become a god all of a sudden." She wanted to find a path for her strength. Right now, Ning Shu was suffering from having no path to take. Without a path to take, she could only stay where she was. The little mouse thought carefully. "Maybe it's because I'm short-sighted. There's no such thing in my mind at all. You can ask the others. Go back." Fa Tian said, "What are you looking for?" "I'll help you find it." Ning Shu said, "But I don't know what to look for." Without even a goal, Ning Shu was also very confused. Ning Shu felt that she had to find Li Wen for this kind of thing. Li Wen's situation was the same as hers. She needed to break through the shackles of the weak human body. Sometimes, it wasn't fair between people. The creatures in the void were naturally strong, and they weren't stupid. Was Taishu Sangliang stupid? Facing them, other people were the stupid ones. They needed to break through, but it seemed very difficult. Ning Shu rubbed her hands. "Let's go closer and take a look." The little mouse shook its head. "No, you think I'm stupid? If you don't go, I'll go by myself." Ning Shu saw that the little mouse was very afraid, so she didn't insist on going. This trip had some gains. They obtained countless snacks and some strangely shaped corpses. If they really wanted to find something powerful, they would definitely have to go to a dangerous place. It was impossible to find Lingji on the side of the road. The little mouse must have taken them to a safer place. The country girl wanted to enter the city and yearned for a bustling big city. Ning Shu said, let's change direction and walk around. They would strive to familiarize this area and clear the way for them to enter the city in the future. The little mouse looked at Ning Shu. Aren't you tired? Ning Shu said, no, I have a dream. Ning Shu and the little mouse began to carefully explore the surrounding situation. Ning Shu even took out the map that Brotherly One had given him. However, this map depicted the places that he had followed the little mouse to and the surrounding situation. There was no more macroscopic map. Ning Shu felt that he should be like Li One and make a map. That way, he would have a plan. Especially where there were races, he could avoid conflicts. Ning Shu focused all his energy on making the map. Fa Tian followed Ning Shu obediently and asked, where was I born? Ning Shu was speechless. Damn, I really don't know. The process of getting Fa Tian was a bit complicated. This made Ning Shu a little nervous. She did not get Fa Tian from Fa Tian's birthplace. Fa Tian said, I was born in the void. Little mouse told me. Where was I born? Ning Shu glared at the little mouse. What was she talking about with Fa Tian for? How did she know where Fa Tian was born? Did she have to go to the Great Gate Planet? The Great Gate Planet would probably spit on her face and ask her to scram. Even if she knew, she would not be willing to tell her. Ning Shu said, it doesn't matter where you were born. What matters is who accompanied you. The little mouse did not understand why this woman was so fierce to it. Ning Shu nodded. Yes, maybe the place you were born in is bare and empty. Fa Tian said, oh, I see. Don't I have siblings? Little mouse said, it's already rare to have one. You still want siblings? You are unique. Fa Tian accepted the fact that he was unique. I am unique. He did not really care about where he was born. To view the new chapter of Zoe, please go to mobile address. To view the new chapter of Zoe, please go to mobile address. Chapter 3678. Ning Shu kept perfecting his map and marked out the dangerous places. Little Mouse saw that Ning Shu was so motivated and felt a little creeped out. This guy still didn't want to give up and wanted to go to that big place. With her small arms and legs, she was really like an ant beside those people's feet. Little Mouse didn't want to go because the creatures there were too arrogant. It was an exaggeration to say that she could kill it with one slap. It wouldn't die that easily, but it didn't seem to scare this woman. So annoying. Little Mouse said, I advise you to give up. You can be a tyrant in other places, but that doesn't mean you can still be a tyrant in that place. Ning Shu glanced at it. When did I become a tyrant? You didn't. You didn't. You were a tyrant every day. Whenever you were unhappy, you would pull a long face. It was pitiful to live under someone else's roof and live under someone else's nose. It was really pitiful. Ning Shu ignored Little Mouse's resentful expression. Didn't you eat a lot of energy and can split some subordinates? Little Mouse wanted to split, but after hearing Ning Shu's words, it didn't want to split anymore. This woman enslaved it and even wanted to take its subordinates. Little Mouse clutched its chest and looked very weak. My body is still weak. Ning Shu nodded. I was thinking that when you have subordinates, I will bring your subordinates to the void. I don't need to trouble you all the time. Little Mouse, Fa Tian asked, what split? Little Mouse immediately said, nothing. Ning Shu insisted, it wants to give birth. Fa Tian looked at Little Mouse's stomach with some suspicion. He was born and raised by heaven and earth. He heard that many creatures relied on flesh to reproduce. Little Mouse was very desperate. It covered its face and felt that its glorious image was shattered. It's not giving birth. It's splitting. Ning Shu, oh, it's called fission reproduction. Little Mouse said angrily, shut up. Knowing that Little Mouse was about to give birth, Tian was very interested in the little mouse's belly. He tossed and turned to look at the little mouse, gently stroking its belly with his fingers. Is your child among them? Little Mouse shrieked, no, no child. Tian said, don't be angry. Don't affect the baby. Ning Shu's eyes were red and she was in a trance. Tian was a fast learner. He even knew about fetal qi. Little Mouse didn't want to talk anymore. He had nothing left to live for. He stared blankly and was too lazy to explain. Ning Shu was still expanding his base map and couldn't help but move towards the city. Little Mouse couldn't even pretend to be dead now. Stop your wild ambition. You can't get in. Ning Shu, I have a dream. Little Mouse, if you can't get in, it's useless to say anything more. Ning Shu, I have a dream. Little Mouse, nonsense. Ning Shu, nonsense. Who are you talking about? Little Mouse, nonsense. I'm talking about you. Ning Shu nodded. I have a dream. Little Mouse had a big headache. Its nose twitched and it quickly covered its nose. It was a familiar smell and a familiar formula. Little Mouse jumped on Ning Shu's head and grabbed Ning Shu's hair to cover its body. It didn't want to jump on Tian's head, but Tian's hair was too short. Tian looked at Little Mouse worriedly. Did you affect the baby? Ning Shu narrowed his eyes when he saw Little Mouse like this. Suddenly, his eyes widened, and his eyes lit up. Sure enough, after a while, he saw a senior uncle in black with Sang Liang beside him. Their direction was, Ning Shu immediately waved to senior uncle and Sang Liang. Senior uncle, Tai Nyo, are you going to enter the city? Give me a ride. Ever since the little mouse's inexplicable metaphor, Ning Shu's mind was full of this magical setting. If senior uncle and Sang Liang could enter the city, they could hitch a ride. Take me to the market. I want to enter the city. Little Mouse took a deep breath. What the hell? What are you going to do? So smelly, ecstasy. Senior uncle glanced at Ning Shu with a cold face, snorted, and walked straight past Ning Shu. The silver-haired man also walked over. Ning Shu didn't care if the two agreed or not and followed behind. The silver-haired man turned back. What are you going to do? I'm going to the place you want to go. Let's go together. We can take care of each other on the way, Ning Shu said. The silver-haired man said, oh, really? If you're going to turn into ashes, why are you still going? Ning Shu swallowed her saliva. I just wanted to go to the market and look for something. But it looks dangerous. Ning Shu said, then I won't go. Can you help me get something? The silver-haired man said, no, I'm not a peddler. Then he left. Ning Shu sighed. It really wasn't easy to enter a big city. It was normal not to bring her. Not long ago, he beat senior uncle. It seemed that senior uncle had recovered again. He was indeed strong and healthy. Ning Shu didn't expect to follow them. If he could, he would make a killing. If not, he wouldn't lose anything. It was better to continue perfecting the map. Ning Shu took out a handful of snacks and stuffed them into Tian's mouth with her sweet mouth. Tian gave some to Little Mouse. Eat more to nourish yourself. Nourish your ass. I already said that it didn't have children. Little Mouse took a long time to recover. Oh my God, it stinks. It stinks even more than before. The wind smells like this. Ning Shu froze for a moment and asked Tian, do you smell it? Tian moved his nose. There's a faint smell. It's not obvious. It seemed that Little Mouse's keen sense of smell was a racial advantage. Ning Shu was a bit disappointed. I can't go with you. Fatian stuffed something into his mouth and said vaguely, he won't take us. He was lying down before, and I absorbed his energy. Only Fatian was on Ning Shu's side. If it was someone else, he would have directly spat on Ning Shu's face. How shameless. You just slapped him, and now you want to give him a ride? Did you lose your memory? Ning Shu wasn't disappointed. Even if there was no previous incident, it wouldn't be easy to follow them. He still had to rely on himself. There was a celestial realm in front of him, but he couldn't enter it. Ning Shu said, I have a dream. Little mouse, are you crazy? You can't forget it. Wishful thinking. You can't forget it. There's no response. Little mouse said, let's go back. We've been wandering for so long. Ning Shu said, let's wait a little longer. Little mouse said bluntly, are you waiting for them to come back? God knows when they will come back. I'm tired. I want to rest. Ning Shu, lazy donkeys have a lot of shit and urine. I want to continue making maps. There's nothing to do when we go back anyway. Little mouse said, don't you do missions? Don't you know how many missions you've put aside? Your system is so bitter. It doesn't dare to rush you. Little mouse had been with Ning Shu for a long time and understood what Ning Shu was doing. Little mouse despised him. Why do you care about those planes? To view the new chapter of Zoe, please go to mobile address. To view the new chapter of Zoe, please go to mobile address. Chapter 3679. As a mission taker, there was a mission quota. If they completed it, they could do whatever they wanted. If they didn't, they had to do the mission. Anyway, everyone in the organization had a mission. The stronger they were, the more things they had to do. Ning Shu not only had to do missions, but also deal with star stones. Now, there was one more task, which was to search for materials in various planes that were about to be broken. If she had a world of living beings, she would have stored the living beings in the world of living beings into her own world of living beings. Ning Shu was very gentle with the world tree. If it could evolve, it would evolve. If it couldn't, it would be raised. The world tree had eaten a lot of good things. The world tree of the Chongsam man was still a small seedling. Her world had grown into a towering tree. However, when did the little mouse become so familiar with Danqing? It even helped Danqing urge her to do missions. On the other hand, Danqing really didn't urge Ning Shu to do missions. She was unknown and didn't have much of a presence. She probably knew that what she said didn't have much weight to Ning Shu. Danqing, as long as you're happy. Danqing looked at the backlog of missions and was about to cry. Ning Shu, I have a dream. I'm not in the mood to do missions before I complete it. Ning Shu explored the void while waiting for the Taishu and the others to come back. She had something to ask the Taishu and Sang Liang. The little mouse was exhausted. After thinking about it, it planned to split its subordinates to work for it. It turned into a mercury-like state and split into a soybean-sized water droplet. This water droplet slowly rotated and became bigger and bigger. Finally, it turned into a naked humanoid creature. It had no gender characteristics. Its bottom was flat, but its chest was also flat. As soon as it transformed, this person cupped his hands to the little mouse and shouted, "King." The little mouse yawned. You work with her. I'll rest. Originally, the little mouse would split a little energy from little mouse to give birth to subordinates. To some extent, the little mouse could be regarded as the creator. And this newly born creature could also split its own energy to give birth to the next generation of creatures. However, after the energy had been diluted, the living beings born below were only average in strength and did not have much intelligence. It was just like the creatures that pressed down on the border before. They were all strange, ugly, and stupid things that ate everything. They could only listen to orders and do whatever they were told to do, not having any thoughts of their own. Fatian looked at Little Mouse in shock. She really gave birth. Little Mouse simply closed its eyes, not wanting to listen at all. It was afraid that it would explode. Ning Shu's Little Mouse asked, "Do you want an endless amount of energy?" The little mouse opened its eyes. Yes. Do you want to be powerful enough to pierce through the heavens and the earth? The little mouse's nerves trembled. Yes. Do you want to be fearless and do whatever you want? The little mouse said hoarsely, yes. Ning Shu said, then split more of your subordinates to look for energy bodies with me, because I also want to. The little mouse raised its claws. Fuck you. Next, this person with no personality would charge forward for Ning Shu. If there was any danger, he would step on the landmines. If there was any delicious food, he would quickly pick it. He was strong and healthy, and very loyal to carry out orders. The little mouse was actually very powerful. At least, she couldn't split into powerful and loyal subordinates. The first batch of people like this were the most powerful, loyal, and able to think independently with a bit of wisdom. They were indeed annoying locusts. With such subordinates, no matter where they went, nothing would grow. Ning Shu saw Senior Uncle and the silver-haired man from afar and shouted, "I'm collecting old props, new props, and second-hand heavenly materials and earthly treasures. You can exchange them for stainless steel wash basins." Ning Shu shouted as he walked towards the two. When Ning Shu shouted again, the two stopped and silently watched Ning Shu approach. Ning Shu said, "Are you going back? Let's go together." Senior Uncle and the silver-haired man didn't bother with Ning Shu and let Ning Shu follow behind them. Ning Shu narrowed his eyes at Senior Uncle. The silver-haired man followed Ning Shu's gaze and frowned. "Why are you staring at people like this?" Ning Shu said, "I'm not." The silver-haired man said, "If you want to look, look openly. Why are you staring at people's buttocks?" His thoughtful look really made people's stomachs feel uncomfortable. "Ning Shu, do I have to look up and stare at the back of your head?" Ning Shu shook his head. "No, I don't stare at buttocks. I stare at the crotch." Senior Uncle, who was walking in front, stopped with a mocking expression. Ning Shu said indifferently, "Your buttocks are drooping. Do a handstand for half an hour." Senior Uncle glanced at her and didn't bother to pay attention to her. Ning Shu saw that they were about to leave him behind. Ning Shu said to the silver-haired man, "I have something to ask you. Go to the consultation room." Ning Shu said, "No, it's about Senior Uncle." The silver-haired man said, "No comment." While they were talking, the Grand Elder was nowhere to be seen. Ning Shu said, "Next time he lies in front of me without a sound, I will let my weapon absorb his energy. As for whether Senior Uncle's problem is a secret of the organization, I don't know. I don't care why he fell down, but as long as he falls in front of me, I will dismember his body. He was a dead man. Who knew he would come back to life? It would be a waste not to absorb his energy." Ning Shu said, "You told me the reason. Next time he falls down, I can go further away. He could hold it in." The silver-haired man said, "Can't you tell if someone is dead or not?" Ning Shu said, "According to my method, he's cold, so he's dead." "Sorry, you're dead." The silver-haired man said calmly, "Then you're quite willful." Ning Shu didn't say anything and just looked at the silver-haired man. The silver-haired man thought for a moment and said, "It's a long story." Ning Shu said, "Make it short." The silver-haired man glanced at her. "One law, the sea, and the other is Xingqing." It was very concise. "Please use 2 words to expand the sentence." Ning Shu said. "Make it short." Hearing the name Xingqing after a long time, Ning Shu was in a daze for a moment, followed by a burst of irritation. Why was this guy still here? And he had something to do with Senior Uncle? There was no end to it. What were these two brothers doing? No matter what state Jingqin was in, as long as he didn't have anything to do with her, she would really bite Jingqin to death. How dare you steal my things? My family's belongings are gone, and the resources and money I saved for so long are gone. Ning Shu didn't doubt that Jingqin was alive. He even suspected that Jingqin was alive somewhere, or even by his side, searching his body over and over again. It was probably because senior uncle sacrificed Jingqin for the sake of the overall situation. Then, he wanted to take care of Jingqin, which was why such a twisted thing happened. So, Jingqin and senior uncle were one. To view the new chapter of Zoe, please go to mobile address. To view the new chapter of Zoe, please go to mobile address. Chapter 3680. What kind of perverted operation was this? The elder brother merged his younger brother into his body. On the phone, this was something that only a pervert could do. Oh, he. Then he was suppressed and not allowed to come out. What kind of problem was this? Did he have nothing better to do? Ning Shu really did not understand this operation at all. Was it because of love? Since it was to save someone, why did he have to suppress it in his body and consume his own strength to suppress it? Ning Shu really had a big brain. Ning Shu grinned and looked at the silver-haired man, waiting for an explanation. The silver-haired man said, "It's like this. It was an emergency that day. It won't happen again. Don't worry, it won't happen in front of you." Ning Shu said, "I don't want to hear this. What's the specific situation?" The silver-haired man said directly, "You don't need to know the specific situation. Anyway, he won't die." Ning Shu said, "There's a problem with the Sea of Law. Won't he? Dog leading?" The silver-haired man was a little surprised. "Who told you he's going to die? If the mother dies, the child will die with her." Ning Shu said, "Oh, but he caught the main point. Die together? Even if they did not die together, there would be a direct impact. The reason why Jingqin was sacrificed was to create a new Sea of Law. On one hand, it might be because there were billions of planes. Jingqin said that if the Sea of Law was cut off from these planes, it might be less of a burden. On the other hand, if it was not serious, Jingqin would be sacrificed. The planes were important, but Jingqin treated the world like ants and did not care at all. It was like a high-level creature looking down on low-level creatures. Jingqin said that his elder brother was unwilling to sacrifice him for these low-level creatures. He also said that Taishu was doing it for his own survival. He said that Taishu was crazy. It was impossible for there to be no impact. Even if the silver-haired man said it casually, how could it be so serious that he wanted to kill his brother who climbed out of the Sea of Law naked? Jingqin was still in Taishu's body. He wanted to kill Jingqin one moment and protect him the next. If the situation was contradictory, it was exactly the same as Taishu's contradictory behavior. Because of this, Ning Shu felt that Taishu Jingqin's connection with the Sea of Law was probably not ordinary. Even if the Sea of Law collapsed, the Taishu wouldn't die, but the situation wouldn't be good. Could it be that he would die? Linking everything up, Ning Shu was 100% sure that Taishu and Jingqin would definitely be affected by the Sea of Law, and it would be a direct effect. Ning Shu basically understood, so he said, "Got it." The silver-haired man didn't know that Ning Shu was imagining so much. He didn't say anything to Ning Shu and left. Ning Shu stroked his chin and walked slowly as he pondered. Little Mouse let out a long sigh. Don't get close to smelly people. Just because you can't smell it doesn't mean that others can't. Ning Shu looked at the little mouse and asked, "What do you think is wrong with the Sea of Law? What other problems are there? The tides rise and fall, the grass wither and the grass flourish, the years change, birth and death are the unchanging rules. The Sea of Law is a dry well." Oh, Taishu wanted to dig a new well. What he was most confused about was why he didn't hesitate to create a new sea of law to save the one that was about to die. He even sacrificed a brother. Thinking about it carefully, it was like the ancient times when there was a shortage of food during natural disasters, and people were forced to eat their children. Ning Shu felt that if he were to ask Tai Shu Yi or the silver-haired man these questions, they wouldn't have any answers. He just casually asked the little mouse, thinking that the little mouse was a void creature. Maybe it knew, but it didn't matter if it didn't know. Little mouse thought about it and said, "It's probably one with the sea of law." Void creatures are born from the heavens and the earth, but they are not purely born from the heavens and the earth. Some creatures are directly cut off from their mother's body, like the Heaven Punisher, who was born as an individual, like me. Ning Shu listened carefully. Then. But there are still some who are connected to their mother, just like not cutting the umbilical cord. They are connected. Of course, each has its pros and cons. For those like us who are separated, life and death are up to fate. As for our future, it's all up to us. And those who are connected have the protection of their mother, and the mother provides them with strong and unparalleled power, like that person. Little Mouse rolled its eyes. But when the mother is hurt, he will inevitably be hurt, and it will affect him. If the mother dies, it can't provide him with strong power, and he will slowly enter a period of decline. Even if you rely on your own strength to survive, you can't resist the sanctions. Whether you have a mother or not, everyone's fate is the same. Who can resist the ruthless and tough sanctions? Little Mouse's tone was a little disappointed. It could split into countless subordinates, valiantly and spiritedly traverse the void, but when it came to being sanctioned, it could only cry. In the end, it couldn't escape fate. However, it gritted its teeth and said, "In the past, I wanted to directly destroy that pool of water several times, but I was blocked by an iron wall." That person is smart. Since the Sea of Law gave birth to a plane, he used the stronger ants of the plane to protect the Sea of Law. Little Mouse looked at Ning Shu with some pity. "You are just cannon fodder." Ning Shu rolled his eyes. "What kind of look is that? Do you believe that I won't dig out your dog eyes? If I let you destroy the Sea of Law, there's still me. Without the Sea of Law, how could a plane be born? Without a plane, how could she appear? Even if she was born by her parents, there must be conditions and preconditions for her birth. It could only be said that it was a mutually beneficial matter. The Taishu needed to protect the Sea of Law, and they were protected in the plane. On the other hand, it was normal for them to be pushed out. As for whether they died or not, it depended on their strength. Nothing could be worse than a country. They understood the reason, but they still complained and cried. The sadness in their hearts couldn't be relieved by reason. Ning Shu never cursed the Sea of Law to dry up, even if he had a grudge with the Taishu. Ning Shu asked, "If it leaves the mother's body, will it harm the mother's body?" "You're really stupid. How can it harm the mother's body? On the contrary, it will reduce the burden. A blood-sucking bug is constantly sucking your blood. Now that the blood-sucking bug is gone, do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?" The Taishu is probably unwilling to die like this, so he's struggling on the verge of death. Punishment is fate, and no one can escape it. Actually, I can help to punish him. The sooner he's destroyed, the sooner he can be reincarnated. He can still return to the countryside, Little Mouse said. Ning Shu said, "Shut up. You feel uncomfortable if you don't cause trouble for a day, right?" He didn't know if the little mouse was naive or heartless. He could laugh and say that he would help to destroy the Sea of Law. He probably destroyed too many things. He didn't care at all. /BK Chapter 3681 Little Mouse said, "Why are you always guarding such a broken place? I'm a person who knows how to repay kindness. I'll take you to tour the void. The void is so big that I probably won't be able to finish traveling even if I die." Take Li Wen and live a carefree life. The more Little Mouse thought about it, the better it felt. It suggested to Ning Shu excitedly. Ning Shu looked at Little Mouse and did not say anything. Little Mouse felt that Ning Shu was probably moved and said, "It's better to get rid of it as soon as possible. It's a mess anyway." Grand Uncle is now in a difficult position. Even if he wants to cut off contact with the Sea of Law, he might enter a period of decline. However, if he coexists with the Sea of Law, he will be affected by the Sea of Law. Therefore, no matter what choice he makes, he won't be able to escape the end of decline. Besides, your organization is used to protect the Sea of Law. As for protecting the plane, it's incidental. After all, without the plane, how can we choose an ant like you? We can't uproot the leek. As long as we don't uproot the root, we can keep cutting. Do you think that if the Sea of Law collapses, this organization will also fall apart? Do you think that others will still care about you? All of you will be abandoned. Do you still want to raise useless people? Little Mouse raised its paw and said vehemently, "Let's go to the void." Ning Shu was too lazy to care about Little Mouse. He put away the map that he had made. Every time he moved forward a little, he would be able to make a complete map one day. The void was too big, and probably no creature would think of making a map, especially since the void creatures seemed to be very lazy. It was so comfortable to lie down and sleep. Little Mouse saw that the other party was indifferent after it said so much. It could not help but say to Fatian, "Do you think it's better to stay in this broken organization or go to the void to be free? The things we find are only the size of a fingernail. What's the point of others taking the bigger part?" Fatian just said, "I'll follow Ning Shu. Wherever Ning Shu is, I'll be there." They were originally one and the same, so how could they be separated? The little mouse rolled its eyes and was in a bad mood. It was probably because it hadn't received much energy previously and was unhappy. Now it wanted to fly alone and even invited Ning Shu. With Ning Shu, Fatian, and Li Wen by his side, his days were going to be great. After separating from the silver-haired man, Ning Shu seemed to be quieter and did not speak much. Fatian held Ning Shu's hand and said, "Don't be upset." Ning Shu shook his head. "I'm not unhappy. It's just that when I heard a name, I felt a little emotional." "Who is it?" Fatian asked. Ning Shu paused for a moment and said, "A person with a grudge. I thought he was dead, but I didn't expect him to still be alive." "Since Xingqing is still alive, does that mean that the matter of creating a new Sea of Laws has ended?" Ning Shu felt that it was unlikely. The Sea of Laws was related to the interests and lives of too many people. Such a huge organization, including the Taishu and the Abyssal Prefect, all relied on the Sea of Laws. If there was no plane, whether it was the life plane or the world of reincarnation, in the end, the Abyssal Prefect relied on devouring the souls of living beings. If the Sea of Laws collapsed, these things would no longer exist. The Abyssal Prefect would probably have to find another place to live. The Abyssal Prefect and the little demon were born with a mission. When this mission came to an end, their fate would probably be similar to the mission enforcers of these organizations. Therefore, when he heard that Xingqing was still alive, Ning Shu was more surprised than the so-called past grudges. Perhaps most of it was invested in the creation of the Sea of Laws, but it also left Xingqing a chance to live. Suppressed in the body. Thinking about it, he felt that this was probably the case. Did the Taishu want to have it both ways? But sometimes, he wanted to have it both ways, but in the end, he couldn't have it both ways. Ning Shu was not bewitched by the little mouse. She wanted to wander the void, but not follow the little mouse's group. Li Wen was a lesson learned from the mistakes of others. Sometimes, Ning Shu suspected that Li Wen was a little selfish because he couldn't stand the little mouse's subordinates. It was impossible to not be discriminated against in a large group of foreign races. Ning Shu asked the little mouse, "Do you know where there are energy bodies?" The little mouse said, "Icebergs, there are so many icebergs. Tisk, it's too cold. Are there any other places?" When Ning Shu thought of icebergs, she felt that her teeth were about to freeze. Moreover, she couldn't cut through icebergs. Even weapons would be frozen. The first time was because she followed the grand uncle and the others, she was given an iceberg. Next time, there wouldn't be such a good thing. If she brought them to the destination, she wouldn't have any credit. Even if she followed them this time, she wouldn't be able to get any energy bodies. This time, the silver-haired man gave her an iceberg, which meant that it was a reward. There was no chance in the future. Even if they were quietly cutting through icebergs now, it had nothing to do with her. Did the little mouse think that they could still be divided? She thought too much. The little mouse shook its head. No. If it weren't for the big icebergs, how could those energy bodies have survived until now? Also, energy bodies are born randomly. Maybe there are energy bodies in front of us now, but maybe there are energy bodies hundreds of thousands of miles away from us. "Let's go to the icebergs," the little mouse said. Ning Shu. "Then you have a way to deal with the icebergs?" Even with Fatan, Ning Shu didn't think that she could cut through the icebergs or pull them up. One had to know that even the abyssal prefect's trident was frozen and couldn't use its strength. Fatan was a whip and couldn't do anything to the icebergs. The little mouse said, "There's no other way. Don't we have the grand uncle and the others?" Ning Shu looked at him with pity. "Do you think they'll give you the things they got?" The little mouse was stunned. "Are they that evil? Are they going to dump us? They can't do that. The energy bodies of the icebergs have nothing to do with us in the future." The little mouse said, trembling. "They have something to do with us. If you can make them, they'll be ours. But if they make them, they have nothing to do with us. Can you do it?" The little mouse's ears drooped. "No. If there was a way, I would have eaten all those energy bodies." "Ning Shu, you can even eat planes. Why can't you eat these things?" The little mouse, "Planes are nothing. They have nothing to do with the icebergs." The little mouse thought. "Other places?" Ning Shu waited. Maybe little mouse really had other places. The little mouse sighed. "No. We can only rely on luck. Energy bodies weren't easy to find. It was more important to find something that could increase her growth limit. This was what she needed the most at the moment. When she went back, she would spend some money to ask. She didn't expect to get such things from the organization. Just getting some information would give her a direction/BK. Chapter 3682. Ning Shu did not return to the system space. Instead, he went straight to the consultation room. No matter how much it would cost, he had to get some information from the silver-haired man. On the phone, Ning Shu looked at the naked sexless man and said to Little Mouse, "Can you put some clothes on him or put him away?" A naked person followed them step by step. She was the most outstanding and eye-catching person. Little Mouse said, "Oh," and opened its mouth to swallow its subordinate. Ning Shu and Fatan were speechless. Fatan said in a trembling voice, "You ate your child." Little Mouse said, "I can't do it. I just let him stay in my body." Fatan looked at the mouse's stomach in confusion. "You're pregnant again." Little Mouse did not want to explain anymore. "No, I have a big space in my body. I can put many subordinates." Ning Shu said, "Oh, then why didn't you put your subordinates in your body and make them all die?" If he put his subordinates in his stomach, he would not have become a loner. Little Mouse was stunned and said, "The situation was so urgent. I didn't think of that." Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu felt that if he had such a thing, he would definitely not forget it. If Ning Shu did not say that, Little Mouse probably would not have realized this and became very disappointed. Although those subordinates did not have much intelligence, it did not mean that Little Mouse did not feel sorry for them. A loner would always be unhappy. With subordinates, he would be high-spirited. With one order, he would set off valiantly. Fatan touched Little Mouse's stomach and said, "Don't be sad. Don't affect the baby. We'll have another one in the future." The silver-haired man came out of the room and saw Ning Shu with his family. He sat down and asked, "What do you want to ask this time?" Ning Shu briefly explained his troubles and then asked if there was anything that could change his physique. The silver-haired man listened quietly. After a moment of silence, he asked, "Why do you want to change your physique?" "You're a quest taker. You need a soul to complete missions." Ning Shu replied, "I'm really weak. I have no chance of winning against the void creatures. Moreover, I'm going to the void to look for energy bodies. If I encounter any danger, I won't be able to deal with it. I think the mission is important, but looking for energy bodies and other things is equally important." The silver-haired man crossed his fingers and placed them on the thick book. He said, "Do you need energy bodies? Why are you looking for energy bodies? What are you doing?" Wasn't he asking the obvious? Ning Shu said, "To support the family, and to look like the Sea of Law." The silver-haired man couldn't help but laugh. Ning Shu had never seen the silver-haired man laugh before. He had always been cold and quiet. When he laughed like this, he suddenly seemed a little more human. "Look at how much you hate him, yet you still want to help him find the energy body." Ning Shu unceremoniously rolled his eyes. "Hearing you say that, I suddenly don't want to look for it at all. I think for the big picture, we should let Taishu cut off his connection with the Sea of Law. This way, it can reduce the burden on the Sea of Law and allow it to last a little longer." Ning Shu simply wanted to look up to the sky and howl. Finally, there was a day when he could also stand on the big picture and make others give up and feel disgusted. The big picture, it was all for the big picture. "What the hell, you don't agree? This is for the big picture." The silver-haired man shook his head. "Things are far from that simple." Ning Shu just shrugged his shoulders and declined to comment. It was natural to let the official sacrifice. When it was Taishu's turn, he didn't let him die but cut off the connection. It wasn't that he sympathized with the official, but the same thing happened to different people, so the results were completely different. Only by being strong could one control their own destiny. Alright, maybe things were really complicated. Ning Shu asked, "Let's not talk about these things. I want to ask if there's anything that can change my weak physique." The silver-haired man nodded. "Yes." Ning Shu's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly asked, "What is it?" The silver-haired man, "There's a place called the 9 Underworlds. The 9 Underworlds has a tree called the Emperor Granary. Its leaves are like jade and can't be broken by weapons." Ning Shu, "No weapons can cut it, and you want me to eat it?" This tree called the Emperor Granary was probably her hope. The silver-haired man directly said, "No, it's to integrate into the Emperor Granary." Ning Shu, "How do I integrate into it?" The silver-haired man, "You can't integrate into it. This tree has no attributes, but it's abnormally strong." Ning Shu rubbed his chin and pondered. Then why integrate into it? Did she want to become a tree? The silver-haired man, "You're cement. Actually, after adding water and sand, you'll become concrete." Ning Shu, "Is this a metaphor?" Ning Shu suddenly became excited. "As long as I integrate into the Emperor Granary, it's fine, right?" The silver-haired man shook his head. "First, you can't go to the 9 Underworlds. Second, you can't get the Emperor Granary. Third, you can't integrate into the Emperor Granary." The silver-haired man thought for a moment and said, "This difficulty is equivalent to letting a person fly." Ning Shu was a bit disappointed. "Is it that difficult? How can it be easy to go against the heavens and change your constitution? You're a human, a human. Ning Shu sighed and asked, then can the creatures in the void lands integrate into the Emperor Granary? The silver-haired man, why do you have to integrate into it? You'll change your constitution into a mess. Ning Shu, who didn't have a good constitution, felt really miserable. Ning Shu asked, where's the 9 underworlds? The 9 underworlds is mobile. It's an independent space formed naturally. Ning Shu was expressionless. He sighed and asked, how much? 5 million. Ning Shu's heart was numb, but this information was worth 5 million. At least he had a direction to work towards. Ning Shu asked, besides the Emperor Granary tree, are there any other alternatives? The silver-haired man, no. Ning Shu transferred the money and took Fatan out of the consultation room. The little mouse said, why did you integrate into that thing for no reason? Because I'm too weak. I have to find a way to become stronger. The little mouse glanced at Ning Shu. You don't have to work so hard. With me around, no one can bully you. Ning Shu thought the most miserable thing was not being led on a strange path, but carrying a sword and riding a horse to the end of the world. In the end, a person said, girl, let's share this life together. Then he excitedly broke the sword and killed the horse. When he looked back, the person was gone. Ning Shu said, thank you. For such words, other than saying thanks, he didn't think of anything else. Ning Shu asked the little mouse, do you want to integrate into the Emperor Granary tree? I'd be crazy to integrate into that thing. If I integrate into it, I might lose the ability to split. Without the ability to split, I'll be useless. Maybe a new ability will be born because of the integration, but I don't want to take the risk. I advise you not to integrate into it either. Maybe you'll lose the will of death and get a useless ability. Ning Shu, who hadn't obtained the Emperor Granary yet, was worried about whether or not he could integrate. He was thinking too much/BK. Chapter 3684. When fusing with the Emperor Granule, it would definitely be extremely painful. Ning Shu's teeth hurt a little. With the example of the past, she naturally had to hesitate a little. Hesitating my ass. Ning Shu didn't even have an Emperor Granule now. Should I go to Tsinghua University or Peking University when I grow up? The woman asked, do you want to fuse with the Emperor Granule? Ning Shu nodded. Yes, I haven't improved in a long time. The woman didn't comment. The human soul is shackled. The soul was yin, and anything that was yang was especially harmful to the soul. Ning Shu asked, may I ask what it's like to fuse with the Emperor Granule? The woman became more and more indifferent. Pain, inner demons, and all my abilities were devoured by the Emperor Granule. It took a lot of effort to survive. Ning Shu felt sad. As long as you're alive, everything can start again. The woman shook her head. You're thinking too much. The Emperor Granule can change one's physique. It took away my power, but it also changed my physique. I'm no longer a soul, so I can't do missions and start again. I know what you're thinking. Since it changed my physique, it's a good thing. But I have a physique, and there's no possibility of me becoming stronger. My strength, the laws I comprehended, the rules I have, everything I have is gone. When the woman spoke, her voice was very forbearing. Obviously, she wasn't willing to become like this. Ning Shu was speechless. This was quite painful. The loss of fusing with the Emperor Granule was actually so great. This was completely like a lottery. No, even a lottery wasn't like this. It all depended on the fusion. One could become rich overnight, but one could also be like this woman, having nothing and even losing one's life. One could also live, but the fusion produced something useless. Ning Shu felt that there was probably a certain punishment in this. Just as the silver-haired man said, going against the heavens. This was no longer something that could be comforted by the philosophy of being willing to give up. This was a shocking gamble with one's life. Ning Shu was actually very afraid that his will of death would disappear after the fusion. The will of death was really a very powerful thing. With the will of death, Ning Shu felt that even the Taishu couldn't be bothered with him, unless it was something important. Perhaps it was too strenuous to kill it. As for the other mission enforcers, Ning Shu felt that not many of them would be able to kill her. It was not easy to obtain the will of death. He had only obtained it after dying once. Was he going to die again and lose it? Sigh, I don't even have anything to eat, yet I'm so conflicted. I ate too much. When the woman saw that Ning Shu's face was scrunched up like a bun, she sneered, "Why are you afraid?" Ning Shu nodded honestly. Scared. Di Jun had never seen anything like this before. At this moment, Ning Shu could tell that this woman's emotions were somewhat unstable. The woman snorted. The worst outcome is to be like me. Death isn't scary. What's scary is living like this without any hope. Ning Shu asked, "Didn't you change your physique? Can't you cultivate?" The woman replied. "Yes, it changed my physique. I have a spongy physique and can absorb a lot of things." Ning Shu, that's a good thing. The woman, but once you use your strength, use it, and twist it, there's an endless amount left. It can't be stored. To put it simply, when you were about to fight, you had to use the strength in your body. In the end, you would lose all your strength. A spongy physique. Even if she blocked a hole, would there be another hole to block? Ning Shu, this Di Jun really didn't like her. What kind of luck was this? Ning Shu thought that his luck had always been bad. If he were to fight her, he might not even be able to survive. Ning Shu's imagination ran wild. He said to the woman, "Then fuse again. Maybe you can change your physique again." The woman, she was already unhappy. Now that she heard Ning Shu say this, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She couldn't help but say, "I don't have any strength left to fight against Di Jun." It sounded simple, but it seemed like a solution. But if she did it again, she would definitely die. "I advise you not to fuse. It's too risky." The woman planned to send him off. Clearly, Ning Shu's visit made her unhappy. Ning Shu grunted. "Whether I can find anything is still a question mark." Ning Shu asked, "I want to ask a question. Does Di Jun have consciousness?" The woman, "Every plant has a spirit. To fuse with it, of course, I have to erase some instinctive consciousness." Ning Shu asked, "But how did you decide to fuse with it? The risk was so big. How did she convince herself?" The woman said coldly, "Of course it's for strength, supreme strength. Some people will wonder what's the point of climbing up like this. It doesn't seem like there's any kinship, friendship, or love." Wrong. Only by being strong can I willfully have friendship and love. I can be friends with whoever I want. I'm not afraid that my lover will betray me. That kind of unparalleled dignity and confidence. No one can humiliate me or trample on me. There's no need to compromise. It's my choice to be a good person or a bad person. No one can interfere. This is how a person should be. I want to rest. You can leave." The woman's face was impatient. The word "scram" was written all over her face. Ning Shu stood up and cupped his hands, thanking her. Then, he left the thatched hut, looked back, and teleported back to the system space. Little Mouse said to Ning Shu, "See? You still want to fuse with Di Jun. She won't die, but there's no hope. She doesn't dare to come out. She's afraid of death and there's no hope. TSK. Ning Shu, why did it sound like she was going to fuse immediately? We haven't found anything yet. We'll worry about it when we find it." Little Mouse jumped up. "You still want to find Di Jun?" Fa Tian held Ning Shu's hand and said, "Don't fuse. I don't want you to do that. Ning Shu didn't know what to say. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Fa Tian frowned and was a little unhappy. Ning Shu said, of course, I know you're doing this for my own good. I know what I'm doing. Fa Tian originally wanted Ning Shu to make a promise, but he thought that it would probably take him a lifetime to find that thing. There was no hurry. The chat system rang. Ning Shu opened it. It was an unfamiliar number. The content was very arrogant. Woman, come and see me. Ning Shu, who is it? Scram. Ning Shu couldn't be bothered to answer. The chat system rang again. You're much more obedient now. I'm Liren. I've become a super task taker. I'm at your restaurant now. Come and see me. Ning Shu, Liren. Oh, Ning Shu suddenly remembered the trouble Liren had caused him before. He didn't want to see him at all. He asked, what trouble did you cause again? Liren, I didn't. I've become a super task taker. I can enter the law space. I can see you now. To view the new chapter, please go to mobile address. To view the new chapter, please go to mobile address. Chapter 3685. Ning Shu wasn't in the mood to see Liren. She just said, work hard then. Liren was a little anxious. Aren't you coming? I'll wait at your restaurant. Ning Shu, no, I'm not free. Just say my name after you eat. It'll be my treat. Liren, sorry, I caused trouble. Ning Shu, oh. Then I won't go. Solve the problem you caused yourself. Do you want me to solve it for you? What was Liren doing? She wasn't an old mother who had to wipe Liren's butt all the time. Once was enough, but there wouldn't be a second time. Liren, fuck, this woman is really. Liren suddenly couldn't find a reason. It wasn't easy for him to become a super task taker. He almost didn't have much time to rest. He just wanted to get stronger quickly. He thought that she would look for him excitedly and say, thank you for your hard work. But she was so cold. It was like a basin of ice water had been poured directly on Liren's head. She didn't care about him at all. This fact made Liren very uncomfortable. He felt that there was a deep abyss between them. Was it wishful thinking? Ning Shu really wasn't in the mood to see Liren. She happened to bump into Ning Shu when he was thinking about life. As for Liren becoming a super task taker, it would be much easier to see him in the future. But thinking about Liren's personality, Ning Shu really didn't like it. Liren didn't dare to call Ning Shu over. Instead, he said, I'll treat you to a meal. Come over, I have a gift for you. Ning Shu, keep the gift for yourself. Although Liren had become a super task taker, Ning Shu felt that Liren's family should be very thin. The last time he saw Liren, he was still an intermediate taskmaster. Now that he had become a super taskmaster, he was probably doing missions non-stop. Those who wanted her to become a super task taker were all poor. What could Liren have? Liren was speechless. He was really stubborn. Liren lowered his voice and asked, is the earthworm okay now? Ning Shu said, not bad. I have a child now. Liren was speechless. There was really no way to continue this conversation. Liren was so anxious that he scratched his ears and cheeks. He said honestly, I miss you. Don't you miss me? Ning Shu, it's all right. Liren asked, are you free now? Can you come over? I ordered a lot of things, it would be a waste if you don't come. I know you are busy. You also need to rest. Liren didn't dare to talk loudly anymore. After all, the other party didn't pay attention to him at all. Liren kept sending messages, and the chat system kept ringing. His tone was low and submissive. Ning Shu couldn't help but laugh. Liren was much smarter now. If one method didn't work, he would change it. The difference in tone was like heaven and earth. Ning Shu held Fa Tian's hand and said, "Someone is treating us to food." If he didn't go and see Liren, he probably wouldn't give up. He wanted to ask for praise and think that they had a close relationship. Actually, that wasn't the case. When Liren met more people and saw more, he wouldn't think so. Everyone had the mentality of admiring the strong. When Liren became stronger, that kind of admiration would fade a lot. Ning Shu's little mouse asked, "Are you going? Someone is treating us to food." Little mouse waved his hand. "No, what humans eat is trash. Is it better than energy bodies? If not, don't call me." He hadn't rested since he came back. He wasn't going to eat trash. Fa Tian naturally had to go. He obediently followed Ning Shu to a restaurant in Water City. Walking into the restaurant, he glanced around and saw Liren. At the same time, he also saw someone he didn't want to see. Zhang Jusen was sitting at the same table as Fa Tian. They were even talking. It didn't seem like they were sharing a table. They knew each other. Why were the two of them together? Ning Shu narrowed his eyes. He held Fa Tian's hand and turned to leave. He didn't want to see people he didn't want to see. Liren turned and saw Ning Shu's back. He was holding a child's hand. He didn't dare to recognize him, but he felt that he was very familiar. He quickly chased after him. Liren ran quickly and blocked Ning Shu's path. "It's you. Since you're here, why are you leaving?" Liren lowered his head and glanced at Fa Tian. Ning Shu asked. Ning Shu said calmly, "I don't want to see another man." Liren was stunned. "Who? You mean Zhang Jusen?" He even knew his name. They really knew each other. Zhang Jusen also came out. When he heard Ning Shu's words, he said, "You're still so stubborn. Even if there are disagreements between us, it's not that serious." Ning Shu said coldly, "I've always been open-minded when I encounter things, but that doesn't stop me from holding a grudge. You still dare to appear in front of me. But I'm quite surprised." Zhang Jusen was like a tortoise. When he encountered danger, he immediately retreated. When the danger seemed to have passed, he immediately popped his head out. Did Zhang Jusen think that others would lose their memories after a long time? Liren frowned and asked Zhang Jusen, "What's going on? Didn't you say that you were friends with Ning Shu?" Liren's face was similar to Ning Shu's. It was quite likely that Zhang Jusen had noticed him. Liren's sword-like eyebrows were raised high. Clearly, he was very dissatisfied with Zhang Jusen's deception. He said to Ning Shu, "How would I know that he had a grudge with you? Moreover, he's very familiar with your matters. He said that he was a friend, so I didn't think too much about it." Ever since he became a mission enforcer, Liren had been alone. When he met Zhang Jusen by chance, they had a common topic, and that was Ning Shu. This made their relationship closer. Liren paid attention to Zhang Jusen because he said that he was Ning Shu's friend. At this moment, Liren couldn't even be bothered to look at Zhang Jusen. Liren's gaze kept drifting to Fa Tian. Fa Tian grabbed Ning Shu's hand tightly and leaned against Ning Shu's side. His head leaned against Ning Shu's arm, and his lips curled up, silently laughing at Liren. Liren was speechless. Even though he was treated like this, Zhang Jusen's expression didn't change. "Our teeth and tongues are still clashing, let alone friends. I've always treated Ning Shu as a friend. In my heart, I've always treated him as a friend." Ning Shu didn't even look at him. She didn't have the habit of making herself feel disgusted. She held Fa Tian's hand and left. Liren was very unhappy. "You're already here. Why are you leaving just like that? I didn't know that you hated him so much. You didn't even tell me, so how would I know?" Zhang Jusen, who was being despised, didn't feel embarrassed at all. It was as if they weren't talking about him. "I'm sorry, then I'll leave first. You guys have a good time together. Look at how beautifully he said it. He was obviously being despised, but he took the initiative to leave. How magnanimous and sensible. Ning Shu felt that Zhang Jiasun was still afraid. Chapter 3686. Liren felt that Zhang Jiasun was quite sensible and knew how to conduct himself well. Zhang Jiasun left without any hesitation. Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasun's back view. She was flipping through the small notebook in her heart. She clearly remembered what Zhang Jiasun had done. Find a chance to take revenge. If Zhang Jiasun did not appear, she would not have remembered. What was Zhang Jiasun doing? To make his presence known, she suddenly remembered what Zhang Jiasun had done to her. He ran pretty fast. Next time, I'll just pull him into the void and kill him. The Law City did not allow fighting, and the void did not care. Ning Shu's heart stirred. If Zhang Jiasun appeared in front of her again, she would definitely grab the opportunity. Liren said, "The annoying people are all gone, so let's eat." Ning Shu said, "Eating is not important, work hard, becoming a super mission enforcer is nothing, next, you have to comprehend the laws and rules, there is not much time." The current situation in the Sea of Law did not allow Liren to take his time leisurely. Once the Sea of Law fell apart, the organization would also fall apart, and these mission enforcers would live and die peacefully. The purpose of the mission enforcer's existence was to protect the Sea of Law. Liren said, I know, let's go in and eat." Seeing that Liren did not like to hear it, Ning Shu shut up. Liren felt wronged in his heart. He had not done anything recently, and did not have much time to rest. He had become a super mission enforcer, but in the end, he still said the same thing. Was it that difficult to praise him? Ning Shu brought Fatian into the restaurant and sat down. The table was filled with dishes, it was extremely sumptuous. Not long after sitting down, Liren could not hold it in anymore. Ning Shu asked, "Who is this child?" Fatian immediately said, "I am his child." Hearing that, Liren could not help but question Ning Shu, "How many children do you have?" Ning Shu put down his chopsticks. "Can't you eat properly?" If Liren didn't throw a tantrum for a while, he would feel uncomfortable in his heart. Ning Shu didn't want to eat something and leave on bad terms. It especially affected one's mood. Liren took a deep breath. "This child, where did you pick him up?" Liren knew how he was born and why this woman loved to pick up things. Most importantly, he picked it up and threw it away without any mercy. Heartless. Ning Shu said, "This is my future comrade, a weapon in human form." Liren nodded and picked up some food for Fatian. "Eat more." Since it was a weapon, they might have to be together for the rest of their lives. It was really unpleasant, but there was nothing they could do about it. Fatian picked up the meat and threw it back to Liren's plate, saying, "I don't like this." Liren swallowed his anger and picked up a piece of pastry. "This is delicious. Didn't all children like sweet things?" "I don't like it." Fatian shook his head. Liren gritted his teeth and said, "What do you like?" "I like to pick up my own food," Fatian said. Liren had already given up on trying to curry favor. This little brat was really too annoying. "Then you pick it up yourself." Liren asked, "What's your name?" "My name is Liren." It was given by Ning Shu. Fatian pouted. Such an ugly name. It definitely wasn't given by Ning Shu. Liren had a myocardial infarction. To be precise, this name was not given by Ning Shu. "You still haven't told me your name." "Fatian, my name is Fatian." It was given by Ning Shu. "It's true." Ning Shu said to Liren, "Do you want to see the earthworm? I can take you there. If you want to go, just say the word." Liren didn't care much about the earthworm, just like how Ning Shu treated Liren. Ning Shu felt that he didn't have any feelings for Liren. After all, there wasn't much. After all, the earthworm had been guarding Liren until he transformed. This feeling was not fake. Was the earthworm too ugly? Liren thought for a moment and said, "Okay." Ning Shu nodded. "Okay, I'll take you there after eating." Fa Tian didn't understand what the two were talking about. It was probably because he didn't participate in the things that the two had experienced before. Fa Tian ate silently. The three of them finished the food on the table. When it was time to pay the bill, Ning Shu said, "I'll pay the bill with merits. You've just become a super task taker. You need to accumulate your wealth slowly." Liren heard the price and immediately lost his temper. He let Ning Shu pay the bill. He felt a little embarrassed. He called people over to eat and it was still a woman who paid the bill. Fa Tian, who was straight, felt very humiliated. How could a woman pay the bill? After paying the bill, Ning Shu opened the world of samsara. A black hole appeared in front of the three of them. Ning Shu held Fa Tian's hand and entered the black hole. Liren followed behind unhappily. Even if they wanted to hold hands, it should be fair for everyone to hold hands. Taking advantage of their small size, they came to the world of samsara. It was a gray area with wandering souls. Liren felt a little emotional. He was born in this world but was eventually abandoned. Is the earthworm still in this world? Liren asked. Ning Shu said, "No. Living things can't survive in this world." Liren. "It's dead." Ning Shu. "No, it's still alive." Ning Shu brought Liren into the Nine Palace Mountain. On the second level of the Nine Palace Mountain, they came to the place where the earthworm lived in seclusion. In the courtyard, Han Chen rolled up his sleeves and was digging a hole with a hoe. Yao Nyang was throwing seeds into the shallow trench. After throwing the seeds, she used her feet to fill the hole with the soft soil beside the trench. She was very skilled. She probably did a lot of farm work. Ning Shu coughed. Yao Nyang and Han Chen looked over. When Yao Nyang saw Ning Shu, she immediately walked over and opened the courtyard door. She asked, "Auntie, why are you here?" Yao Nyang looked at Liren and frowned. What was this person's relationship with her auntie? Could it be that her husband had a child? The last time she came, she was all alone. She had progressed so quickly, and her child was already so big. Yao Nyang was no longer a blank slate. She knew what she needed to know. Han Chen walked over and cupped his fists. "Senior." Ning Shu asked, "Where's the earthworm?" Han Chen said, "He went into the mountains." No wonder. If the earthworm knew that Liren was here, it would have sensed him. Ning Shu walked into the house and asked Yao Nyang and Han Chen about the results of their cultivation. Due to her natural constitution, Yao Nyang's cultivation was slower than Han Chen's. Moreover, Han Chen already had a foundation and had cultivated before. He had already condensed his aura. Yao Nyang couldn't help but ask, "Auntie, who is this child?" She didn't directly ask who the man was. Instead, she asked about the child. Ning Shu was also very tired. "This is my child. He's a weapon that has taken human form." "Oh," Yao Nyang replied, and her gaze shifted back to Liren. Liren wanted to see how Ning Shu would introduce him. Ning Shu said, "He's a colleague. You two were raised by the same father." The smile on Liren's face froze. Then, it gradually disappeared. Chapter 3687. Liren felt that their relationship wasn't like that between husband and wife, so they shouldn't be so distant. Colleagues, Liren was very annoyed. What was this woman trying to do? He treated her as the closest person in his heart, but in the end, it was just wishful thinking. Liren immediately pulled a long face for Ning Shu to see. Ning Shu only glanced at Liren and couldn't be bothered with him. He could pull a long face as he liked. Liren looked at Ning Shu's indifferent expression and became even angrier. Was this woman's heart made of iron? Was she angry at him for having a relationship with Zhang Jiasen? In all honesty, it was Zhang Jiasen who took the initiative to come over. Who knew that there was a grudge between the two of them? If Ning Shu told him everything and knew about her, he wouldn't have been in contact with Zhang Jiasen. Zhang Jiasen was already on his blacklist. Ning Shu. Ning Shu really didn't know what was going on with Liren's resentful gaze. What did she owe Liren? She didn't owe him money either. Was he unhappy that she brought him to see earthworms? Yao Nyang didn't quite understand. What did he mean by being raised by a father mean? Could this person be raised by earthworms as well? As soon as the late earthworm got home, he felt a familiar aura before he even entered the house. His heart skipped a beat, and he wriggled his body into the house. His tail was dragging a bloody wild boar. The wild boar had very long fangs, and its eyes were wide open. The earthworm's tone was excited and high-spirited. Liren, you're back. Liren frowned as he looked at the earthworm. He glanced at the wild boar behind him and nodded. I'm back to see you. The earthworm immediately wriggled his body. In human terms, he was probably at a loss. When he thought of the blood on his body, he rushed out and jumped into the water tank to wash himself clean before returning. Earthworm returned to the house and asked Liren, when are you leaving? How long have you been back? How strong are you now? Have you adapted to not having a body? The earthworm had deep feelings for Liren. Additionally, Liren was originally born from golden thread grass and was nearly possessed by a cultivator. After being rescued by Ning Shu, the earthworm took care of him. The earthworm was full of worship for the golden thread grass, and also felt like an old father to Liren. As soon as it saw Liren, it asked a lot of questions. Compared to the earthworm's agitation, Liren was much calmer and answered the earthworm's questions indifferently. But the earthworm was quite happy. Yao Nyang, who was watching from the side, felt very uncomfortable. Her uncle was being treated so coldly. It was as if her old father was being treated so coldly. She said to the earthworm, "Uncle, go prepare some delicious food." The earthworm immediately said, "Okay, Liren, what do you want to eat?" "Lady Yao, my dear old father." Liren said, "Don't bother. I've eaten before. Can you speak?" The earthworm nodded. "Yes, I had to take care of Yao Nyang before. I can't let Yao Nyang be a mute." Ning Shu suddenly looked up to the earthworm, which was really cute. Although she wasn't human and complained about two-legged monsters, she still took good care of Yao Nyang. Back then, he had also stayed close to Liren to protect him. Such motherly nature and patience were rare among humans. In return, Ning Shu felt that it was necessary to improve the earthworm's strength. It wasn't good for him to always crawl on the ground like an earthworm. He didn't know if the earthworm could stand up. Liren didn't comment on the earthworm's words. His cold attitude was the same as Ning Shu's attitude towards Liren. The more Yao Nyang stayed in the house, the angrier she became. She simply turned around and left. Seeing this, Han Chen felt that there was nothing he could do, so he followed her out. When Han Chen came out and saw Yao Nyang kicking the door, he said angrily, "The door didn't offend you. Brother Chen, you didn't see how arrogant that person was." "I don't believe that he was raised by uncle," Yao Nyang said indignantly. She was probably unhappy that her beloved earthworm was trying to curry favor with another person. More importantly, the other party didn't appreciate it. Han Chen had a strong desire to live and didn't express any opinions. He couldn't stand on Yao Nyang's side, but if he stood on the earthworm's side, he would offend Yao Nyang. When a girl threw a tantrum, it was a headache. Han Chen very stiffly changed the topic. Why don't we continue to grow vegetables? Yao Nyang's eyebrows immediately rose. You still have the mood to grow vegetables at a time like this? If you want to grow vegetables, go grow them yourself. Han Chen, don't guess a girl's thoughts. She can always find your fault and punish you. Han Chen went to fetch water. The water in the water tank at home was ruined by the earthworm. Ning Shu naturally noticed the situation outside. He didn't expect this meeting to be so unpleasant. Liren didn't seem to have anything to say to the earthworm. They chatted awkwardly the entire time. Whatever the earthworm asked, Liren would answer. Ning Shu said, "We've been here for so long. It's time to go back." Liren especially can't be away for too long. Liren was like an ordinary old father. He couldn't bear to part with Liren, but he was also afraid of delaying Liren's matters. Especially now that Liren was working for someone else. "Alright, you guys go first." The earthworm swung its tail and said. Ning Shu left with Fa Tian and Liren. After leaving Nine Palace Mountain, Ning Shu asked Liren, "Why do you have such an attitude towards the earthworm?" The earthworm was very attentive, which made Liren seem even colder. Liren sneered. "Then why don't you treat me better? When you're scolding me, think about yourself." Ning Shu frowned and looked at Liren indifferently. "What do you mean?" "What do I mean?" Liren was so angry that he almost laughed. "When you pity the earthworm, why don't you pity me?" Ning Shu. "Why should I pity you? Are you missing an arm or a leg, or is there something wrong with your brain? Are you retarded? Care for retarded people. Care for disabled people. Liren, you're very cold to me." Ning Shu, "Then aren't you just as cold to the earthworm? I allow you to treat the earthworm like this, but I don't allow others to treat you like this. To be honest, the earthworm protected you until you transformed, but I didn't protect you for even a day. At most, you received some knowledge from me. It saved Liren a lot of time. We're not that close." Ning Shu kept thinking about what she owed Liren. But after thinking about it, she didn't owe him anything. Was it just because she didn't show much affection to him and didn't meet Liren's requirements that he developed a grudge against her? Ning Shu looked at Liren's indignant expression. "Calm down. What do you want her to do? Just say it." Liren's situation was probably like, "I treat you like this, but you don't treat me the same." Because he felt that he also hoped that the other party would reciprocate his feelings. To watch the new chapter of Zoe, please go to mobile address. Chapter 3688. He didn't get anything in return, so he was dissatisfied. Moreover, it was still fermenting, and it looked like he was going to develop into an enemy. Ning Shu asked, "You did that to the earthworm, was it because the earthworm was weak?" Liren thought about it and said honestly, "A little." Ning Shu said again, "If I was as weak as the earthworm, would you be so insistent on getting my response?" Liren was silent. Ning Shu understood. Liren just wanted to get the recognition of the strong. He didn't care so much about the weak. Ning Shu found the trick. It was probably because he chose the Thunder Beast and not Liren, which made Liren feel that he wasn't strong enough. Therefore, he was insistent on getting her recognition and making her accept that he was wrong. "If I had to do it again, I would still choose the Thunder Beast." Of course, Ning Shu wouldn't say this out loud. Since Liren had this request, she would fulfill it. Ning Shu said directly, "You are very strong, much stronger than me. You became a super task taker so quickly. It was much more difficult for me at that time." Liren heard what he wanted to hear the most, but he felt uncomfortable. There was an indescribable irritation. He had achieved his goal, but he felt that something was wrong. The corner of Fa Tian's mouth twitched as he glanced at Liren. Idiot. Strength was one's own. Why did he have to suppress others and make them admit that he was very strong? Was there something wrong with him? Strength was something that could be hidden and revealed little by little. The praise he received was much better than suppressing others and saying that he was very strong. Heaven Conqueror, do you think I'll keep saying that I'm strong? I was very weak, okay? I needed love. Who would like to make themselves look like an impenetrable fortress? The more powerful one was, the more things one could do, alright? Fa Tian liked to walk around with Ning Shu. He didn't look forward to fighting. Ning Shu saw that Liren's face was still gloomy. She had already said what Liren wanted to hear. If he was still unhappy, then there was nothing she could do. Ning Shu still regarded Liren as a junior in his heart. Moreover, he was a junior in the second stage of middle school. He would not quarrel with him for no reason. As for the younger generation, he should be more tolerant. Ning Shu encouraged Liren. Keep working hard. You will surpass me soon. Your future is brighter than mine. Since Ning Shu liked to listen to compliments, it was just a matter of a few sentences. He wouldn't lose anything. Ning Shu was willing to put down his pride. As for the woman that Liren mentioned, Ning Shu could only chuckle. Liren faintly glanced at Ning Shu. At this moment, the gloominess in his heart dissipated a bit. At the very least, he was no longer gnashing his teeth. He faintly said, I want to go back. Ning Shu nodded and left the world of samsara with Liren. The three of them came out of the black hole and stood on the bluestone slabs. Liren was about to leave. Ning Shu said to him, stay away from Zhang Jiasen. He is scheming and evil. Be careful not to be tricked by him. He was like a poisonous snake lurking in the grass. He was secretly waiting for the right time to reveal his poisonous fangs. Liren was a little impatient. Am I that stupid? Ning Shu felt that Liren was just asking for a beating. She kindly reminded him. What was wrong with saying thank you? Liren's attitude made the person who reminded him very unhappy. Ning Shu's face became cold at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's good that you know it in your heart. Seeing Ning Shu like this, Liren could only soften his tone. I know. Ning Shu rolled her eyes in her heart. What did Liren want? Why did he have to make people so unhappy, and then he came to make up for it? After all, he was a super task taker. Ning Shu couldn't help but ask, how did you do the task? She didn't want to admit that Liren had inherited the knowledge from her. Liren, isn't it very simple? If the client has a wish, then it's done. It's so simple. Ning Shu, so it turned out that she thought the task was too complicated. Liren left. His attitude to Ning Shu was much colder. Ning Shu didn't care. Speaking of which, she didn't have much fate with Liren. They didn't spend much time together. Liren's hot and cold attitude didn't bother Ning Shu at all. Fa Tian looked up at Ning Shu and said, we don't have to care about others. As long as we're happy, it's fine. Ning Shu. I'm not unhappy. Could it be that in Fa Tian's heart, she was a resentful woman who washed her face with tears all day long? Fa Tian smiled and said, I mean, we don't have to care about what irrelevant people say. Ning Shu shrugged. She had received the message from the Chongsam man. He sounded quite disappointed. Ning Shu arrived at Time City and saw the Chongsam man drinking in his restaurant. His face didn't look good. She asked, what happened? The Chongsam man sighed and said, I can only follow you in the future. Ning Shu asked, what's the matter? Don't you have a faction? I don't know what's wrong with the faction recently. It's suddenly disbanded. It's not really disbanded, but a lot of people were kicked out. It's embarrassing. I was also kicked out. Ning Shu was a little surprised, why did they kick you out? The Chongsam man, I don't know either. I asked and they said it was an adjustment. Did something happen? The Chongsam man Ning Shu asked. Ning Shu shook his head, I didn't join any faction, so I don't know. Ning Shu wasn't sensitive to the faction problems in the organization. He was alone. Ning Shu felt that it was very likely that the situation in the Sea of Law was not good, causing the big shots of these factions to start saving themselves. For some mission enforcers who were not strong enough, the faction directly kicked them out. Then, those who were left behind were all trustworthy and powerful people. But the problem was that no matter how weak they were, if there was really a problem in the Sea of Law, these people who were not strong enough would still be a force. To put it bluntly, they could be used as cannon fodder. The organization was about to fall apart, and when the tree fell, the offspring would scatter. However, Ning Shu didn't understand what these people were thinking. They probably had other ideas. Ning Shu didn't know how to comfort the Chongsam man, probably because he looked down on the Chongsam man's strength. This was a little embarrassing. The Chongsam man said, "I'll follow you from now on." Ning Shu waved his hand, "Forget it, I can't control you." It was already difficult to control himself, and he still had to bear a responsibility, which was a little difficult. Ning Shu said, "If you have anything in the future, you can look for me. If I can help you, I will try my best to help you. I will not establish a faction." The Chongsam man nodded his head. "I have a feeling that a storm is coming. Is something going to happen?" As an ant attached to this tree, he was probably the first to feel the unusual atmosphere. If there was any movement from above, the people below would instinctively be timid and worried. Ning Shu could only say, "If the sky falls, there will be someone tall to hold it up, there's no use for you to worry. Maybe the faction is too messy, so the organization has been reorganized." The Chongsam man thought about it and agreed, "Heroine, I'll follow you from now on." To view the new chapter of Zui, please go to mobile address. To view the new chapter of Zui, please go to mobile address. Chapter 3690. Ning Shu had deep feelings for the peerless martial art. Moreover, it was a world of faith. If possible, Ning Shu still hoped that the peerless martial art could accompany him for a long time. Damn, the book was deformed from licking. Fuck off, it was time for Li Wen to take the little mouse. After finding Li Wen, the little mouse did not pester Li Wen. Instead, it pulled a long face and was unwilling to follow her, but insisted on following her. When Li Wen was not around, it would nag every day. Now that it had found her, it quickly cultivated their relationship. The little mouse licked its face and drooled as it approached Ning Shu. "This thing emits a fragrance, it's too fragrant." Ning Shu did not know if it was fragrant or not, but now the book was filled with the smell of the little mouse's saliva. Ning Shu originally wanted to let Fa Tian smell the fragrance, but when he thought of the smell of the little mouse's saliva, he did not make things difficult for Fa Tian. What fragrance? It seemed that he had to keep the peerless martial art close to him. Crazy and heartless. If he had come back a little later, maybe Little Rat would have already eaten the peerless martial art. The little mouse said, "Anyway, it's very fragrant. It smells like an energy body. Do you want it? If not, I'll eat it." Ning Shu's heart skipped a beat. The smell of an energy body, could it be the energy body of the iceberg from before? Could it really have been absorbed by the peerless martial art and buried deep underground? She had said that the amount of energy bodies was pitiful. Of course, this matter could not be kept a secret. It had already been handed over, and whether it was inside or not was still unknown. Ning Shu directly rolled his eyes at the little mouse. "You're probably hallucinating from hunger. This is a book, how can it have a fragrance? There must be something wrong with your nose. Even Fa Tian did not smell it, but you did. Tell me, are you normal or not?" The little mouse retorted, "I clearly smelled the fragrance. You don't have this thing to cultivate now, so what's the use of keeping it? You might as well give it to me." "Scram, this is mine, I want to keep it. If you say it's useless, then it's useless." I think it's very useful. Ning Shu set up a small barrier around the peerless martial art. He covered the aura of the peerless martial art to prevent it from leaking out. Most importantly, the little mouse had a dog's nose and could smell it. Although he didn't know what kind of situation a peerless martial art was, it was definitely a good situation. Maybe there were many energy bodies inside. Just the thought of it made Ning Shu feel like she was bubbling with joy. He warned the little mouse again, "Be careful and don't touch my things. Otherwise, don't stay in my place. Go find Li Wen. You were afraid of disturbing Li Wen, but now you're disturbing me." Ning Shu didn't like the little mouse at all. It actually licked her things. Even if there were no energy bodies inside, Ning Shu wouldn't allow the little mouse to spoil her peerless martial art. The peerless martial art was covered by the barrier, and the tempting smell of vitality couldn't be smelled. Only in the system space, there was still a faint smell. The little mouse was very sure that the smell came from the book. It still wanted to say something, but Ning Shu glared at it. "Maybe it's because my world is developing like a living world, so there's vitality. I have to make a world so that I can have a place to stay in the future," Ning Shu said. The little mouse asked, "Don't you have the world of reincarnation? How big is your body? Why do you need so many places to stay?" Ning Shu said, "That's why you're uncultured. Have you heard of the saying that a crafty rabbit has 3 burrows? The little mouse sniffled. "You're a crafty rabbit." Oh, unable to smell the smell, the little mouse didn't want to eat anymore. It was very disappointed. Ning Shu looked at the little mouse. She was quite worried that the little mouse suddenly came back to its senses. It might have something to do with the energy bodies, but it seemed that it hadn't reacted yet. Ning Shu said to the little mouse, "Don't you want to go and see Li Wen? Maybe Li Wen has taken control of the city and disappeared again." When the little mouse heard this, it immediately jumped up and ran away. Ning Shu was speechless. There was no psychological burden at all. The little mouse didn't realize that she was trying to send it away. As soon as the little mouse left, Ning Shu said to Fa Tian, "I want to go in and take a look." Fa Tian said, "Let's go together. In case there's any danger inside, I'm your weapon." Ning Shu thought that it was right. If he had a weapon, he should wear it close to his body. Ning Shu said to Fa Tian, "You'd better turn back to your original form." Fa Tian turned into a black whip with a faint luster and wrapped it around Ning Shu's waist. Ning Shu entered the peerless martial art and repaired the enchantment. She didn't want Little Rat to run back and eat the peerless martial art again while they were inside. The ultimate martial arts was a space after all. The space was like a biscuit in the little mouse's mouth. A space that was more solid was probably compressed biscuits. As soon as Ning Shu entered the peerless martial art, he felt a strong sense of vitality rushing towards him. The world was shrouded in fog, and the dense vitality was in the fog. The entire world was shrouded in fog. Ning Shu was speechless. "I wanted to look for the energy body, but I couldn't see anything in this vast expanse of whiteness." Ning Shu touched the ground under his feet. The soil was moist, and there were puddles in some places. The water contained vitality energy. In this situation, how was she going to find the energy bodies? Could it be that the ultimate martial arts had absorbed a lot of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple energy bodies? Ning Shu even suspected that the energy bodies they had obtained were leftovers after the other party's peerless martial arts had absorbed enough. Ning Shu really wanted to strangle the neck of the peerless martial art and make it spit out everything it had eaten. Ning Shu didn't believe that such a strong vitality and energy came from the ultimate martial arts itself. Once it ate it, it probably couldn't spit it out. If the little mouse knew that the ultimate martial arts had so much energy and vitality, it would really swallow it in one bite. Since it had already eaten it, there was nothing she could do. Anyway, it went into her stomach, so it didn't matter. She just didn't know how much energy the ultimate martial arts had absorbed. Ning Shu's liver hurt just thinking about it. So much. Ah, that's not right. She couldn't use the energy bodies. She could only hand them over to the organization or give them to the little mouse. Thinking about it, if the energy bodies were absorbed by the ultimate martial arts, it would be her gain. How could she feel bad? Now that she thought about it, Ning Shu felt much better. If the ultimate martial arts absorbed it, then so be it. Maybe there would be some benefits. It was better than being eaten by the little mouse. Ning Shu was very satisfied. With so much vitality, she didn't know how the ultimate martial arts would evolve. In the future, she would have another place to hide. Even if life was born, she would have a reincarnation world. In this way, she had formed a complete reincarnation chain. Very good. There was nothing to worry about. There was only one ultimate martial arts. She didn't know how many worlds it could form. Looking forward to it. To view the new chapter of Zoe, please go to mobile address. Chapter 3691. Ning Shu came out of the peerless martial arts and Fa Tian turned into his human form. Little Mouse, who had already left, came back and snorted when he saw Ning Shu. Ning Shu smiled at Little Mouse and said, "Little brother, I have something to tell you." Little Mouse took a deep breath and looked at Ning Shu. "Just in time, I also have something to tell you." Ning Shu said in a light tone, "Then you go first." Little Mouse looked at Ning Shu with his big black eyes and asked, "You're in a good mood?" Ning Shu nodded. "Not bad." Little Mouse said, "Taking other people's things for your own. You're very happy doing it." The smile on Ning Shu's face froze as he asked, You're asking me how I know," Little Mouse said sarcastically. "Didn't you send me away because of this?" Little Mouse went to find Li Wen. Li Wen asked Little Mouse why it was here. Little Mouse casually mentioned that it was greedy for Ning Shu's things and was chased out. Li Wen thought for a moment and asked if it had absorbed some energy from those things to have such a large amount of energy. Little Mouse immediately thought of the energy body. It must have absorbed the energy body. No wonder it was so full of vitality and energy. Little Mouse found it strange at that time. Why was there such a big iceberg? He took the sack of energy body. He was quite generous at that time and gave her all the green ones. He also gave the rest to the organization. He was quite generous. It turned out that he had hidden 90% of the energy body. Little Mouse jumped up and agitatedly accused Ning Shu. "If it wasn't for me, you would have been frozen to death." Little Mouse looked coldly at Ning Shu. "I won't let this matter rest. I won't leave out anything that belongs to me. I was the one who brought you to this place. You said you would give me a share, but this is what you did. You secretly took everything. I misjudged you." Ning Shu said, "Don't be so agitated." Little Mouse was very sad and looked at Ning Shu with dissatisfaction. "You fucking hid so many things. You don't want others to be agitated. You're really disgusting." Little Mouse's black eyes were filled with coldness. He revealed the ferociousness of a void creature. Snatching food from the tiger's mouth. And the tiger was showing its might. Ning Shu calmly looked at Little Mouse. "How do you want to deal with it? I can't miss out on anything that belongs to me. Otherwise, I won't let this matter rest. With your integrity, I don't think it's possible for us to work together. As long as you gather the numbers, we can continue working together. This is the basis of cooperation." Ning Shu pursed his lips. Fa Tian pulled Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu shook his head at him. Fa Tian said to Little Mouse, "The energy bodies have been absorbed by the world. I can't give them to you." Little Mouse didn't say a word. Its belly was bulging, and it looked very angry. Ning Shu said, "Next time when you find the energy bodies, you'll take them all." Little Mouse was so angry at Ning Shu's shamelessness that he laughed. "Next time, Then you owe me this time. Besides, you still have to rely on me to find the energy bodies. You used the things I found and then used the things I found to send me away. Is there something wrong with your brain? Little Mouse was very irritated. The long-term hunger made Little Mouse in a bad mood. It had missed out on so many energy bodies. Little Mouse was very angry. Fation was a little uneasy. It was the first time he saw Ning Shu and Little Mouse confronting each other like this. The atmosphere was very bad. Fation was a little helpless in this situation. He said to Little Mouse, "She didn't do it on purpose. Let's forget about it this time." It's easy for you to say that. Forget it. You shouldn't let me forget it. You should let her do something. Little Mouse was even angrier. He was still being unreasonable. Fation spread his hands and said honestly, "Don't be angry. Don't affect the baby. If you're angry, she won't be able to give you anything." Ning Shu was speechless. Little Mouse was speechless. The atmosphere was stagnant for a second. Ning Shu took out his ultimate martial arts and said to Little Mouse, "The energy bodies have been absorbed by the world. I really didn't know about it beforehand. I can't refute this. There's a rich vitality and energy inside. You can absorb it. However, I have a request. You can absorb the energy, but you can't damage my world. However, you can only absorb half of it. I still have to hand over the other half," Ning Shu said. Little Mouse laughed out loud. "You'll hand it over? Why wouldn't I? We agreed to hand over half." Rather than absorbing all of it, he would rather hand over half to the organization. Fation looked at Ning Shu and whispered, "Ning Shu." Little Mouse looked at the ultimate martial arts and was a little hesitant. "You're really letting me absorb it?" Ning Shu nodded. "Yes, half." Little Mouse sneered. "Do you think that I won't absorb it if you act like this?" Ning Shu shook his head. "No." Ning Shu had completely calmed down. Fation said, "Don't absorb it. It's fine if you don't take a bite. However, this world is going to become a world of living beings." Little Mouse said directly, "The world of living beings has nothing to do with me. It's not my world of living beings. It's just an ant-like place. What does it have to do with me? I didn't care about it in the past. Some things can be forgotten. However, you're cheating me over such a big matter." Hee hee, Ning Shu looked at Little Mouse. "Stop talking. Absorb it. After you absorb it, I still have to hand it over. You're not allowed to absorb more energy. Only half." Inside the peerless martial art, there was a dense fog. This fog was mixed with a dense vitality and energy. If Little Mouse absorbed this fog, it could also absorb the energy. Little Rat directly dived into the peerless martial art and began to devour the energy inside it. Ning Shu placed his hand on the ultimate martial arts. He could clearly feel that the vitality of the ultimate martial arts was slowly weakening. Ning Shu was a little confused. So he was tired and cold. Half of the energy had been handed over. The rest belonged to Little Mouse. What did it have to do with him? What was he trying to achieve by doing this? He had made both sides look like strangers. Fation looked at Ning Shu worriedly. "Ning Shu, don't be sad." "I'm not sad either." Wah, Fation burst into tears. He cried until he hiccuped. "Ning Shu, I feel terrible." Ning Shu patted Fation's head. "It's okay. It's really what we agreed on. Speaking of which, this ultimate martial arts was really capricious." Ning Shu said to Little Mouse, "That's enough. Half." Little Mouse came out of the ultimate martial arts. After eating and drinking, it wiped the corner of its mouth. Its whiskers trembled. It was full of energy and even its fur was much smoother. It had been a long time since it had eaten. This time, Little Mouse was full. Its mood was much better. It said to Ning Shu, "I won't argue with you this time." Ning Shu picked up the ultimate martial arts and prepared to find the silver-haired man to hand over the other half of the energy/BK. Chapter 3692. Little Mouse asked, "What are you going to do?" Ning Shu said, "Hand over energy." Little Mouse frowned. "Why do I have to hand it over? Just let me absorb it." Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu said, "Sorry, if I let you absorb too much, I'll be feeding the enemy." Fa Tian quickly held Ning Shu's hand and followed Ning Shu to the consultation room. The silver-haired man had not come out yet, so Fa Tian and Ning Shu asked curiously, "Why is Little Mouse like this? Are you angry?" Ning Shu said, "I'm not angry. It's just fighting for what it deserves. It's just that I'm questioning what I've done. I've been tired, but I ended up in this situation." Fa Tian said, "But I'm very angry. Why doesn't it care about friendship at all? It's usually fine, so why does it have to turn hostile? You're good, I'm good, and everyone is good. It's just that I won't be looking for an energy body for a while." Ning Shu stroked Heaven's head and smiled. "Don't be angry. What is there to be angry about? Speaking of which, we've still profited. Our peerless martial arts can be considered to have absorbed energy before, so we've more or less absorbed some." Ning Shu said, seeking joy through hardships. Ning Shu said, "Don't be angry. There's nothing to be angry about. It can only be said that there's a deviation in the operation. As for Little Mouse, don't be angry with him. What's there to talk about friendship with a person who's extremely hungry and forced by life?" Ning Shu did not give in to his own interests. If it were her, she would also explode. "Then you're clearly angry when you say you're not looking for energy bodies," Fa Tian said. Ning Shu shook his head. "That's not it. It's just that I've suffered so much, and in the end, I'm helping others. Little Mouse needs to fill his stomach, the Sea of Law needs to be saved, and Grand Uncle needs to live. The organizations, armies, and mission enforcers that rely on the Sea of Law need to live. In the end, I became a villain. I was at a loss." Little Mouse thought for a moment and said, "I heard from Dan Qing that when people reach a certain level of success, they will always suffer some grievances." Ning Shu rolled his eyes. "Who wants to suffer? I have to suffer to comfort myself. Besides, I don't like to be wronged. Especially those who take the initiative to suffer." He had suffered so much that he didn't want to suffer anymore. The silver-haired man came out of the house and glanced at Fa Tian. Fa Tian's eyes were still red, and his nose was red from crying. He asked, "What happened to him?" Ning Shu smiled and said, "It's not about him." Ning Shu was actually quite happy in his heart. Seeing that the silver-haired man valued Fa Tian so much, if one day something happened to him, Ning Shu would have a good place to go to as well. This was the benefit of having strength. Ning Shu took out the peerless martial art and said, "The energy body was absorbed by this. Half of it was absorbed by someone else. The other half should be given to the organization." The silver-haired man looked at Ning Shu in confusion. He probably didn't expect Ning Shu to be so stupid. The silver-haired man just nodded and covered the page with his hand, absorbing the energy inside. The peerless martial art shook slightly, and there was the sound of dragons and tigers roaring inside. The peerless martial art dimmed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The silver-haired man retracted his hand and said to Ning Shu, "There's some energy left. Let your world develop. Pay 20 million merit points." Ning Shu grunted. "It's called 20 million merit points. Does it mean that I'm buying the remaining energy and life force?" The silver-haired man said, "Yes." Ning Shu smiled. "Sure. After paying 20 million, Ning Shu touched the peerless martial art. Holding the peerless martial art, he took Fa Tian and left. After leaving the consultation room, Fa Tian said to Ning Shu, "That uncle is pretty good. He even left life force for the world." Ning Shu held his hand and walked on the stone floor. He said gently, "Child, you have to see through the appearance to see the essence. Originally, I came to give the energy as an unexpected gain for the organization. Leaving some energy can make the world evolve. Maybe it can evolve into a world of living beings. It can also store the living beings of the broken plane in the world. Secondly, it's another 20 million merit points. And the remaining energy was bought with 20 million merit points. It's a deal." Fa Tian's face suddenly wrinkled like a bun. "Then why do you still want to come?" Ning Shu said, "Then give all the energy to the little mouse. Don't worry. I'll remember these losses. I'll get it back from other places," Ning Shu said calmly. The little mouse was trying to provoke her, thinking that she would not hand it over and wanted to absorb more energy. Back in the system space, the little mouse heard Fa Tian's words and sneered. "Idiot. If you let me absorb it, I can still leave you some energy. You won't lose 20 million merit points." Ning Shu nodded and asked the little mouse, "Are you full?" The little mouse touched its stomach. "Just barely." Ning Shu said again, "Since you're full, you can leave." The little mouse suddenly exploded. "What do you mean? Because I absorbed the energy I should have, you want to chase me away?" Ning Shu said, "Our cooperation will probably end here. You wanted to find energy bodies to fill your stomach, and now you're full. As for the organization, with so many icebergs, they definitely had enough energy bodies. If not, they could cut a few more icebergs. The organization probably had enough energy bodies now, and the problem of the Law C could probably be solved by the energy bodies." From the looks of it, there was no difference to Ning Shu whether there was energy bodies or not. She herself did not need energy bodies. He did not know why she was in such a hurry. The little mouse's fur exploded. "What do you mean? After using me, you threw me away." Ning Shu was not angry that the little mouse wanted his things back, but it looked like a victim, which made Ning Shu very unhappy. "I used you. I'm not as round as you. In exchange, you brought me to that place. I'll say that you used me and our organization to create energy bodies. We're not cooperating, and now the deal is over." Seeing that Ning Shu was angry, the little mouse snorted. It could not pull down its face and insist on staying. If Ning Shu said a few words, it would also stay. Ning Shu's heart relaxed. Previously, he was looking for energy bodies to let the Law C last longer. In fact, after finding the icebergs, the source of energy bodies was enough. As for the rest, Ning Shu did not have to worry about it. The matter of going to the city could be done slowly. The matter of changing the physique could not be rushed. The little mouse was flustered and exasperated, and immediately left. When it turned back, it saw that Ning Shu had taken out a book. It seemed like he was planning to tell a story to Fa Tian, and did not think of asking it to stay. Wasn't it just absorbing a bit of energy? Was there a need to turn hostile? Fa Tian asked Ning Shu, "Are you really letting him go?" Ning Shu just said, "It's up to you /BK. Chapter 3693. When Ning Shu was telling the story to Fa Tian was a little absent-minded. Ning Shu closed the book and asked, "The story isn't good. Should we change it?" Fa Tian shook his head and said, "I can't figure it out." Ning Shu closed the book and asked, "What is it that you can't figure out? Tell me." Fa Tian said, "It's still about the energy. It's fine if you give half of it to Little Mouse, but why do you still have to hand it over? If you don't hand it over, your organization won't know." Ning Shu smiled. There's nothing in the world that we don't know. As long as it happens, we'll know. Ning Shu said, this is a cooperation. Little Mouse has to hand over half of it to the organization. Then we have to end this matter clearly and clearly. If we covet a little bit of energy now, we'll have to do a huge favor in the future. I've handed over what I should hand over, so we're done. As for Little Mouse, this cooperation has been completed. As for the organization, I've done what I should do. I've handed over what I should hand over. Otherwise, if something happens in the future, this half of the energy will become a raft for others to attack me with. Whenever something happens, they'll use this half of the energy to ask me for it. What do you think I should do? This favor makes me unable to straighten my back. Things that can be solved with money are very simple. I'm just afraid of inexplicable favors. As for the 20 million merit points, it's just to buy some leftovers. I don't need this 20 million merit points, so there's no need for favors in this transaction. This matter has been clearly explained to the organization and Little Mouse. There's nothing unclear about it anymore. If a matter needs to be ended clearly, then the matter of finding the energy body will come to an end. This matter has been reported to the organization, so it's clean. There's no inexplicable favor left. In the future, if someone uses it, it'll be natural for them to ask me for help, Ning Shu said directly. Some people are good at using inexplicable favors to make you return the favor. Moreover, a favor can be used countless times. Otherwise, it would be ungrateful. Compared to bearing this kind of favor, it's much better to just hand it over and settle the matter. As for who is at a disadvantage and who is at an advantage, after the transaction is completed, they can only bear with it. The Little Mouse seemed to understand and said, so, we didn't lose anything. Ning Shu, whether or not I'm at a disadvantage is only temporary, but I'm completely relaxed now. What I should do for the Sea of Law has already been done, and as for the rest, I don't care anymore. The Sea of Laws had enough energy bodies, and as for the other problems, Ning Shu was helpless. Ning Shu was freed from his anxiety. Previously, he had not found the energy body, so he wanted to quickly find the energy body. He was a little anxious. Now that the energy body was found, the source was enough, and everything was done, the next step was to leave it to fate. She did not need to worry about the Sea of Laws, she believed that the organization would handle it properly. Next, she had to start looking for the Emperor Granule. Even if it was not the Emperor Granule, it would be something else. She had to start looking for a way to change her physique, and she had to prepare for her own survival after the organization fell apart. She had to plan for herself wholeheartedly. Ning Shu only had a sense of relief now that the dust had settled. As for the energy body, it was a good thing if she could use it, and it was not a good thing if she could not use it. Back then, when she saw the organization looking for the energy body, there were so many void creatures looking for it. Even the Little Mouse wanted it to fill its stomach. Wow, it was really a good thing. Actually, this thing was of no use to her, and she could not use it. No matter how good it was just that. Only things that she could use were good things, and things that she could not use were not good things. Just like the Little Mouse, the void creatures felt that the Emperor Granule was trash, but to Ning Shu, it was a good thing. At least, it was a glimmer of hope. Fa Tian saw that Ning Shu seemed to be very happy, and laughed, seems like the end of things is worth being happy about. Ning Shu took the lead, of course it's worth being happy about. At least in the Sea of Laws, what she needed to do was already done. The Little Mouse came back, and said to Ning Shu unhappily, aren't you just angry that I swallowed the energy? I'll return it to you. Ning Shu said directly, what are you vomiting for? Why would I want a pile of your vomit? I've already eaten it, why would I vomit it? Since you're full, it's good. Otherwise, when you remember in the future, you've never eaten a full meal by my side. Ning Shu did not want a pile of vomit, and really did not want the Little Mouse to vomit it back. Things had become unclear again, annoying. Ning Shu said, "What's yours is yours." Little Mouse said, "Then why did you burn the bridge after crossing it? Just let her go." Ning Shu retorted, "Didn't you follow me because you wanted to fill your stomach? Now that you're full, our cooperation is over." Back then, without the energy body, he had to pick up fragments to raise the little mouse, and then he had to buy the world's origin. Fatian could not help but say, Ning Shu did not know that the world absorbed the energy. Little Mouse rolled its eyes, does it make a difference whether he knows or not? Anyway, what's mine can't be left out. This is the basis of cooperation. Fatian was a little speechless, she didn't hide it on purpose. Little Mouse said, "Who cares if you did it on purpose or not? The result is the same. What's mine is mine. Why should I give up my share just because you said you didn't do it on purpose?" Ning Shu casually flipped through the pages and said, "Since we've already settled the matter, why are you so hesitant to spit it out again? You said it yourself that this is the basis of our cooperation, and I've already given you what you deserve. Why are you still throwing a tantrum at me? You even want me to coax you, thinking that I've cheated on you. Isn't this matter already over?" What the hell, she was really drunk. Did he think that she was not good to him? "You can yell and scream, but I can't ignore you." Ning Shu said, "I won't look for the energy body for the time being, and you don't have to follow me." Little Mouse snorted and did not speak. Ning Shu could not be bothered with it, and the little mouse could neither leave nor stay. The atmosphere was quite awkward. Little Mouse could not help but curse, "Damn it, can't I take my share?" Ning Shu felt that Little Mouse was really annoying. "Who said you shouldn't take it? Didn't you say that this is a cooperation? Now you're throwing a tantrum with me, and you want to talk about feelings? Cooperation, feelings, exchange, you have the final say in feelings." Ning Shu was a little annoyed by Little Mouse. It was her problem not to give it anything, but why was it her problem when he gave it something? To view the new chapter of Zoe, please go to mobile address. Chapter 3694. It was so hard to be a human. It was probably angry that it was not the same as it used to be. Ning Shu said directly, "Be normal and rational. Our cooperation is over. I will not care about what you eat or drink in the future. If you are hungry, you have to find your own way." Little Mouse snorted. "If I didn't find my own way, did you?" Ning Shu was speechless. "Will it kill you to speak properly?" "Yes, it was your own way." Little Mouse said weakly, "I was the one who ate it." Ning Shu was too lazy to argue with Little Mouse. "Yes, you are right." Little Mouse was a classic example of talking about money when talking about relationships. When it was time to talk about money, it talked about relationships. When the two of them talked, it was like a donkey's head and a horse's mouth. They could not understand each other. After getting what it wanted, it started talking about relationships. Could it be normal and rational? Ning Shu felt very powerless. She waved her hand at Little Rat. "Okay, don't talk about it anymore. It's already over. Don't worry about it anymore. I beg you to accept those energy bodies. I beg you." Little Mouse said, "You begged me." Ning Shu nodded. "I begged you." Little Mouse said, "Then why did you chase me away?" Ning Shu said, "You can stay wherever you want. It is your freedom." Little Mouse jumped on the sofa. "Then I want to stay here." Ning Shu hesitated and nodded. "You can stay if you want, but you will have to pay rent. If you have time, get some snacks for Fatian as rent. This is my place. If you stay here, I will have to clean it. If you accept it, you can stay. If you don't, you can leave." Little Mouse said immediately, "I didn't ask for rent in the past. Why should I ask for rent now? If you go to the void, I will have to go with you. This is not enough to pay rent. In the past, he had at least some fragments or world origins. Now, he had nothing, and he even had to pay rent. Ning Shu said, I won't be looking for energy bodies anymore, so our contract has been terminated. Don't tell me you want to eat and drink for free here and still need people to serve you. You can't leave anything behind, so it's natural for you to use other people's things. She would lie on the sofa like a corpse when she has nothing to do. The sofa is already old. Ning Shu thought that it was time to buy a new sofa. The little mouse was a vagabond. The little mouse was speechless. Are you not going to the void? Of course, why wouldn't I? Whether it was searching for the emperor or other things, they all needed to go to the void. The little mouse immediately said, then I'm not bringing you to the void to pay rent. Ning Shu shook his head. There's no need. When the time comes and you're hungry, with the world source and the fragments, you won't be able to afford it. I'll figure it out myself. She needed to buy the world source, especially now that there was a problem with the Sea of Law. A chain reaction would cause problems with the plane. It was already not easy to create a plane normally. It would also not produce extra world source, because there was not enough energy. So the world source would probably be more expensive in the future. As for the fragments, she still had to work hard to pick them up. The little mouse curled her lips and did not say anything. She asked Fa Tian, what story are you reading? Fa Tian said, killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. The little mouse made an "oh" sound and did not say anything else. Ning Shu stretched and said to Fa Tian, I'm tired from reading, let's go out for a walk. Fa Tian immediately put down his book and jumped down from the sofa. Okay. Dan Qing's voice sounded a little sad. We can really do missions now, we've squeezed in a lot of missions. As long as he was in the organization, he would have missions assigned by the organization. After completing these, he could do whatever he wanted. Ning Shu said, let's talk about it when we come back. Fa Tian held Ning Shu's hand and asked, where are we going? Ning Shu said, I haven't been to the world of reincarnation for a long time, let's go for a walk. I wonder if the world of reincarnation has evolved into other worlds of reincarnation. Let's go see Skeleton and the others, I wonder if they still have enough merit. Okay. Ning Shu held Fa Tian's hand and entered the black hole. Walking on the soft black sand, Ning Shu said to Fa Tian, in the future, this will be our home. In the future, without the system space, their resting place would be the world of reincarnation, or peerless martial arts. In any case, it would be their base and base in the future. Fa Tian nodded and asked, that's how these worlds came to be. How did they come to be? I collected them bit by bit, slowly accumulating them from nothing, just like building a house. I accumulated them brick by brick, then built the house. Fa Tian said, oh, that's not easy, Ning Shu, you're really amazing. Ning Shu said reservedly, it's just so, everyone just does it bit by bit. Now that we have a place to rest, we won't have to work so hard in the future. Ning Shu patted Fa Tian's head. Life was very promising, very good. Furthermore, a complete chain of reincarnation had been formed in the world of reincarnation. When the living beings of the Nine Palace Mountain entered the world of reincarnation, even if something happened to the Nine Palace Mountain and the souls in the world of reincarnation couldn't be reincarnated, it didn't matter much. At that time, there would still be the world tree, and the world tree would eventually form a world of living beings. Ning Shu brought Fa Tian to find Zhu Jun. Zhu Jun had built a long row of houses, and some skeletons were going in and out of the houses. After a period of absence, the skeletons became different. The color of their bodies turned dark gold, and the color became heavier. In the future, if nothing unexpected happened, these skeletons would probably follow her for the rest of her life. As long as the world of reincarnation existed, these skeletons would exist for another day. Ning Shu felt that he should also do the same as the other factions, make an inventory of what he had, take only what he needed, and leave with light luggage. making preparations in advance, so that he wouldn't be flustered when the time came. Ning Shu asked Chu Jun, "Do you have enough merit? How's the situation in the world of reincarnation?" Zhu Jun's mouth opened and closed as he said, "Nothing abnormal happened. Ying Yu, Yan Chuan, and the others are in the other world of reincarnation. There were a few misfortune beasts that were born, but they were all dealt with," Zhu Jun said. Anyway, these skeletons took good care of the world of reincarnation. Basically, Ning Shu didn't have to worry about it. Ning Shu asked, "Do you have enough merit? If not, I'll give you more." Ning Shu didn't care if he had enough merit or not, and directly took out a meson space, which was filled with energy bodies. Back then, he had sold a slot to connect to the world of reincarnation and received a lot of merit. It couldn't be more worth it to use it on these skeletons. Moreover, when the skeleton's strength increased, they could deal with more problems in the world of reincarnation. If Ning Shu had to manage so many worlds of reincarnation, his brain would definitely be big, and he wouldn't have so much energy. To view the new chapter, please go to mobile address. To view the new chapter, please go to mobile address. Chapter 3695. Ning Shu then went to take a look at the other world of reincarnation. In the surroundings, there seemed to be the embryonic form of a world of reincarnation. These densely packed spaces had a high possibility of becoming a world of reincarnation in the future. Ning Shu didn't expect there to be so many reincarnation worlds. When the time comes, there probably wouldn't be enough souls to fill these reincarnation worlds. However, there was the world tree. The world tree had so many leaves. If it formed a living world, these reincarnation worlds would be used up. From nothing to now, Ning Shu's heart was filled with satisfaction. His body and mind were relaxed. However, with the increase in reincarnation worlds, the number of people needed would also increase. However, to become a skeleton, one would have to suffer a lot. Some souls couldn't bear such pain and their souls would scatter. Moreover, to nurture a skeleton, one would need a lot of merit. Therefore, one still needed to earn merit. Ning Shu was puzzled. Logically speaking, she had the reincarnation world to provide reincarnation for these souls. Why didn't she have any merit? This was too illogical. Why didn't she have any merit? Was it because the reincarnation world didn't have heaven Dao and wouldn't give out rewards and punishments? Ning Shu didn't have a living world. He didn't know if the living world would give merit to the person who built the world. In the future, when the organization no longer existed, he didn't know where to get merit. Therefore, he had to earn more merit now. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to raise a skeleton in the future. Ning Shu returned to the system space and saw Little Mouse sleeping on the sofa. Its stomach was bulging and it was sleeping soundly. In the past, when Li Wen didn't have time, it would make a fuss every day to find Li Wen. It was as if it couldn't live without Li Wen. Now that it found Li Wen, it didn't want to stay with her. It seemed to be staying at her place and was comfortable. Don't talk about being willing to leave her. If Little Mouse had to choose, it would definitely choose Li Wen. In order to not disturb Li Wen, it came to disturb her. It was really thinking for Li Wen. Ning Shu couldn't be bothered to look at Little Mouse. Fa Tian said, "Just let her get some fruits from the void to pay for the rent. It's too little. I can survive without eating those things, but Little Mouse doesn't have a place to rest, so it must be very hard for him. If that's the case, we're at a disadvantage." Fa Tian felt that since Little Mouse wanted to do business with them, he should do it in a businesslike manner. The Little Mouse could not be at a disadvantage, but should they be at a disadvantage? Ning Shu said, "You can ask it for more snacks." Ning Shu continued, "It's obvious that it doesn't want to leave. It will definitely stay here. It's better to let it pay the rent. When the time comes, it will act pitiful and abandoned. We are being cruel and heartless again. If you have nothing to do, you can ask it about the void and increase your knowledge. Fation, do we have to care about what others say? If others say that we're cruel and heartless, do we have to be cruel and heartless? Of course I don't care. As for whether it stays or leaves, it has nothing to do with me. If it wants to stay, it has to pay the price. Ning Shu would no longer use the world origin and plane fragments to feed the little mouse. It had nothing to do with her even if it starved to death. Did she have to care about the little mouse for a lifetime because of a temporary cooperation? Besides, it wasn't like the little mouse couldn't get food on its own. There were so many things to eat in the void. Even if it wasn't full, it wouldn't starve to death. She took in a homeless person and still had to provide food, shelter, and warmth. Fation said, "Oh." Danqing's voice sounded like it was worse than death. She said weakly, "Mission taker, please complete the mission." Danqing didn't know how many missions Ning Shu could complete. She only hoped that he could complete the most basic and guaranteed missions. She didn't expect anything else. Buddhism calmed her down. Calmness came after repeated disappointments. But if this number kept piling up, Danqing didn't know what the consequences would be when they investigated. This mission taker probably wouldn't be punished. Even if there was some punishment, it wouldn't hurt her muscles or bones. At most, it would just hurt her a little. He was different. He would be implicated. The punishment would be much heavier than the mission taker's. He was weak. A little punishment, even if it wasn't too big or too small, would make him unable to withstand it. Ning Shu said, "Okay." The system was too pitiful. The chatting system rang. Ning Shu opened it and saw that a mission had been issued. Ning Shu spread his hands and said to the system, "They asked me to deal with the star stone. When I'm done, I'll go do the mission." Dealing with the star stone could earn merit. Danqing was silent. She was dead silent, as if she had lost all hope. Ning Shu said, "When I'm done, I'll go do the mission immediately. This time, I have to do the mission no matter what." He had to do a few more missions in a row to finish the backlog. Danqing still didn't say anything. She probably agreed. Ning Shu asked Fation to take care of it in the system space while she went to deal with the star stone. Fation said, "I can go with you. I can deal with that thing too." Ning Shu looked at the little Fation. This was child labor. He really couldn't bear it. Ning Shu waved his hand and asked Fation to find something to do. Fation turned into a whip and wrapped it around Ning Shu's waist. "I'm a weapon. Are you going to leave your weapon at home?" Ning Shu said. "Okay." He patted the black whip on his waist. Ning Shu came to the broken place and changed shifts with someone. Ning Shu really admired the grand uncle sometimes. Sometimes, when she saw the sea of law, she couldn't help but feel anxious. However, the grand uncle seemed to be doing what he was supposed to do. He was still dealing with the star stone. However, Ning Shu wasn't anxious now. He could sit and watch. He was also planning for his future survival. People who didn't think about the future would have immediate worries. Without any immediate worries, Ning Shu began to think about the future. Ning Shu calmly changed shifts with the grand uncle and began to deal with the star stone. However, the grand uncle stood at the side and stared at her. Ning Shu was stared at until she was angry. "Go home and look at your mother's sea of law." Ning Shu threw down the item in his hand and said to the grand uncle, "There's something that's not worth saying. If I say it, you'll be angry again." The grand uncle nodded. "Speak." Ning Shu said directly, "Are you fucking crazy? Staring at me and drooling over my beauty? Crazy." Ning Shu was now more impatient than afraid of the grand uncle. If the grand uncle wanted to kill her now, it would probably take a lot of effort. He would probably have to consider whether it was worth it to consume his own ability to kill her. Moreover, he could only erase her consciousness. Perhaps after an unknown number of years, a new Ning Shu would be born. How tiring would it be to kill and be born again? Who knew if she or the grand-uncle would die first? She heard that the Sea of Law could last for a few million years. A few million years? Meow. That could last for a few million years. Did he think she was blind? Some of the well-informed factions were packing their bags and preparing to flee. A few million years was probably an exaggeration. Chapter 3696. Tai Shu ignored Ning Shu's nonsense about coveting beauty and went straight to the point. What have you been in contact with? Ning Shu said, I've been in contact with a lot of things. His tone was as if he had encountered a ghost, been possessed, and had been in contact with things he shouldn't have been in contact with. Tai Shu frowned and didn't say anything else. He turned and left. Was this guy asking for trouble? Did he have to be insulted to feel better? Ning Shu squatted down and began to process the star stone with the prop. Fa Tian turned into his human form and helped him. Ning Shu said, I don't need your help. I can handle it. You're still young. Don't be busy. When you grow up, there will be a lot of things to do. Ha. 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 After playing for a while, Ning Shu asked, what does he mean? Ning Shu asked without looking up, what do you mean? That uncle asked you what you've been in contact with. What does he mean? Ning Shu said as she processed the star stones, who cares what he means? You don't have to worry about what others say, and you don't have to worry about it. Fa Tian rolled his eyes and threw this matter to the back of his mind. Ning Shu held the prop in his hand. He was more concerned about the fact that he didn't seem to know how to make props like this. If something happened to his world in the future, he wouldn't be able to do it without props. When the organization no longer existed, where would he get such props? So he had to make them himself. If he made them himself, he had to learn the method and raw materials. Well, he had a lot of things to do. From now on, he had to become a craftsman. There was a special department in the organization that made props. Who knew how many people there were? There were all kinds of props in the exchange mall. They were definitely not made by one person. While he was processing the star stone, Mo Ming, who was in a military uniform, came over. He touched Fa Tian's head and said to Ning Shu, have you thought about what to do in the future? Ning Shu was stunned. What do you mean by what to do in the future? You don't know what happened in the organization? Mo Ming asked. Ning Shu shook his head. I'm not sure. But he could feel the atmosphere. Mo Ming said, actually, it's not a big deal. It's just that there's news that the organization has disbanded. Ning Shu nodded. Are you sure? Mo Ming shook his head. It's not confirmed news. It's just a rumor. It's only circulating in certain circles. It's better to be prepared. Have you thought about where you'll go if you really disband? Have you thought about it? Ning Shu asked. Mo Ming said, there was a team that took me in. General and took me under his banner. Do you want to join the army? Mo Ming asked. Ning Shu was silent for a moment. Mo Ming was afraid that she would have no one to rely on in the future and wanted her to become a soldier. Ning Shu smiled. Thank you. I know what I'm doing. If he doesn't treat you well, you can come to me. Perhaps in Mo Ming's heart, she was a pitiful, weak, and helpless mission enforcer, all alone. Mo Ming nodded. All right. Let me know if there's anything. Ning Shu nodded. When Mo Ming left, he rubbed Fa Tian's head. Ning Shu was deep in thought. Although this news was only circulating in a small circle, the organization definitely knew about it but did not seem to care. If they did not care, it meant that they did as they pleased. the situation in the Sea of Law was really not good. As for where Mo Ming would go, Ning Shu felt that and he would probably treat Mo Ming well. Mo Ming's luck was really good. It was a typical example of turning misfortune into luck. With such a person in the team, their luck was quite good. He could even be a mascot. Furthermore, Mo Ming's strength was not weak. He had climbed from a small soldier to an He's side and had entered in He's eyes. Mo Ming probably saved the world in his previous life. Was he a superhero? An ordinary body would not be able to bear this kind of kindness. It was a little unlucky. If Mo Ming did not enter the organization, he would probably be a sickly person for life. With such thick luck, he would definitely become a rich and powerful person, but he would always be a sickly person. It was quite scary to think about it. He would be a sickly person for life, regardless of gender. Although Mo Ming's luck was very strong, he was still the most insignificant ant in the billions of planes. Although this ant was golden, it would not be noticed. Would a normal person care about which ant in the field was golden? When Ning Shu entered that world, the system probably sensed it and immediately pulled Mo Ming into the organization. Fa Tian asked, "Are you going to seek refuge with that uncle?" Ning Shu shook his head. "No." Fa Tian nodded. "That's good. After all, you have to bring your family to seek refuge with someone else. It's as awkward as remarrying." Ning Shu. He suddenly did not understand. Ning Shu thought about it. He really did have a family, and there were many of them. There were so many people in the world of reincarnation. If nothing unexpected happened, the number of skeletons would still increase. Ning Shu said, "I won't remarry. What's the point of remarrying? I just need to take you and wander the world." Fa Tian said again, "I didn't ask you not to remarry." Ning Shu. "I've never remarried. There was no such thing as remarrying." Ning Shu chatted with Fa Tian while processing the star stones. She was thinking about how to learn how to make props. For example, processing star stones required props. She had to at least learn how to make one. But she had to reduce the task inventory first. Dan Qing was about to cry. It was not good to make things difficult for Dan Qing. Dan Qing usually did not talk much. Sometimes he even forgot that there was such a system. To be honest, once the organization collapsed, mission enforcers like Dan Qing and those at the lower level would be abandoned. They would not even have a place to stay. They would probably wander in the void until their souls were annihilated. There would be no rebirth. Even the world of living beings and the world of reincarnation would be gone. However, there were still many other birthplaces in the void. Perhaps they could find value in their existence and guard the birthplaces. But at that time, the organization would just be a pile of sand. The strong might be able to survive, but the weak could not. Even if they really formed a group, it would not last long. This huge organization was made up of various departments and a huge number of management personnel. And the purpose of their existence was to guard the Sea of Law. If the Sea of Law did not exist, how could the Grand Uncle and the others spend so much effort to manage them and guard the birthplaces of other planes? Wasn't this a fool's dream? They were born because of the Sea of Law and died because of the Sea of Law. This was the birth and ultimate fate of this organization. If the Sea of Law died, the Grand Uncle would enter the late stage of decline. Even he was going to die. Why would he care about these ants in the organization? He had no time to care about himself. Chapter 3697. Ning Shu felt that he was very lucky. At least in this situation, he had the power to protect himself. He wouldn't be crushed to death under the collapse of the building. This time, Ning Shu took a longer time to process the star stones, and there were quite a lot of broken planes. However, this was expected. After all, the Sea of Law was no longer able to provide energy for the plane. The birth of a plane required energy, and the resources in the plane and the formation of mineral deposits required energy. Perhaps a perfectly fine plane would suddenly explode. The materials inside couldn't be recovered in time. As for the creatures inside, they would be annihilated along with the plane without knowing it. Live with the plane, die with the plane. It took a long time to process the star stones, but Ning Shu didn't complain. After all, it was 100,000 merit points each time. She needed to earn merit points now. She would cultivate skeletons in the future. Only Dan Qing was waiting bitterly, his eyes filled with anticipation. After processing so many star stones, Ning Shu felt a little tired. After all, it was harmful to the soul to process this thing. When the person who changed shifts came, Ning Shu took Fatan home. The little mouse woke up and was eating fruit. When it saw Ning Shu and Fatan, it pointed to the fruit on the coffee table. "I left it for you." Ning Shu planned to light agarwood to relieve his tired mind. As soon as he got close to the sofa, the little mouse sniffed. "You went to the smelly ditch again. Why did you go there? You're stinking yourself." Ning Shu lit the agarwood and said, "I didn't go to the Sea of Law." It was probably the time it took to change shifts with the grand-uncle to talk. Did the grand-uncle stink again? The little mouse spat and said vaguely, "I don't know why you're guarding this smelly ditch." Ning Shu smelled the agarwood and relaxed. When he heard the little mouse's words, he said faintly, "I'm happy." The little mouse curled its lips. "Your organization is raising venomous insects. You think it's a good place?" Ning Shu closed his eyes and didn't say anything. The little mouse continued, "If I let you compete with each other, you will be like a bug in a small jar." Ning Shu only snorted. Whether it was in a small jar or a big jar, the survival of the fittest and the elimination of the weak was the same. The boss of the company didn't give you a job because he cared about you. He gave you a job and a salary because he wanted you to earn money for the company. If you couldn't produce results for the company, you would be fired. Everyone in this organization was the same, but the price they had to pay was even more expensive. They would lose their lives, and they wouldn't even be reborn. Ordinary souls could still jump into the rebirth pool, and their souls would be scattered forever. This was a path of no return. They could only brace themselves and walk down it. Other than increasing their core competitiveness and increasing their survival rate, there was no other way. Ning Shu took a deep breath of the agarwood and asked, "Did you split up those subordinates because you cared for them?" It was still the same behavior to let his subordinates charge and break through enemy lines. All the people in the world came for the sake of profit, and all the people in the world went for the sake of profit. All the living beings in the world rushed about for their own benefit. The little mouse spent energy splitting up his subordinates for the sake of liveliness. The little mouse always urged him on, as if following the little mouse would make his life prosperous. Yes, he didn't dare to think about it. The little mouse was a little capricious. Sometimes, he couldn't feel its pulse. Ning Shu felt that Li Wen didn't like to get along with the little mouse. It was probably because of some tacit rules or benefits, but the little mouse wouldn't abide by them. Therefore, some things didn't go smoothly. Especially when Li Wen was an emperor. An emperor had to balance the situation. He had to manage a large group of courtiers and the affairs of the entire country. When dealing with some things, there were some unspoken rules that everyone had a tacit understanding of. But the little mouse didn't know anything. Its subordinates were all die-hard fans. The king was right. The king was the tallest. Once he gave an order, he would carry it out meticulously. He lived for you, died for you, and stained his hands with blood. He was crazy for you, and banged his head against the wall for you. Ning Shu didn't understand. Was the little mouse mocking the organization or fighting for her? It probably despised the organization because its subordinates were carefree and beautiful. Fatan didn't hesitate to eat the fruit. This was the rent they collected, so it was natural for him to eat. Dan Qing's voice sounded again. What mission do you want to do? Ning Shu, do as you see fit. Do the mission. Ning Shu told Fa Tian that she was going to do the mission and asked Fa Tian not to go too far. There shouldn't be any danger around here. Moreover, Fa Tian was a void creature. Generally speaking, there weren't many mission enforcers in the organization who could kill him. Moreover, who would want to kill a whip for no reason? Fa Tian asked, you can't not go. Ning Shu, no. She had to do her job. As long as the organization existed, she had to do missions. Moreover, her work would increase as her abilities increased. In the past, she only did missions. Now, she had to do missions. Ning Shu opened the exchange store and exchanged for some fasting pills and anti-inflammatory drugs. She was afraid that she would be half dead when she went to do missions. Looking at the dazzling array of items, Ning Shu thought that she should learn how to make items. There were many things she wanted to do. Enrich. After exchanging for the items, Ning Shu said that she was ready. Come quickly, Fa Tian said. Ning Shu clicked and felt a wave of dizziness. She quickly merged into a body. She opened her eyes and saw a rather luxurious bed. It was exquisite and complicated, with a hint of age. It looked quite sophisticated. Ning Shu sat up. Her bare feet stepped on the carpet. The carpet was very soft and comfortable. Her feet were white and small. Her feet were so beautiful. She was probably a beauty. The whole room was decorated in the style of a European aristocrat. Ning Shu looked at herself in the mirror. She had a snow-white face, blue eyes, red hair, and a high nose. She was very young and her face was full of collagen. She was exotic and looked to be about 15 or 16 years old. Ning Shu accepted the plot. The person who entrusted her was called Avril. She was a water mage and was one of the more talented girls in the Rose family. Mages were noble. This was a magical world. Mages were respected and respected. There were mutated and ferocious beasts called magical beasts. They could absorb the magical elements in the air to cultivate. Magical beasts had magic cores, so magical beasts became targets for hunting. However, even more unarmed ordinary people could become food for magical beasts. This was a world rich in species. There were humans, orcs, dwarves, beautiful and arrogant elves, and huge dragons that stood at the top of the food chain. These living beings formed a dazzling magical world. Avril's father was an earl. He was also a mage. His strength was not weak. Her mother was also a mage. Usually, when a mage and a mage married, their offspring had a higher chance of having a body that could cultivate magic. The chances of an ordinary person giving birth to a child that could absorb magical elements were very small, but it was still possible. To view the new chapter, please go to mobile address. To view the new chapter, please go to mobile address. Chapter 3698. Therefore, mages would usually mate with other mages. Due to the nourishment of magic elements, a mage's body was much better than an ordinary person's. They also had a longer lifespan and a younger face. Other than becoming a necromancer, they would make themselves look neither human nor ghost. Avril inherited her mother's water magic. Water magic was nourishing and had a slight detoxifying effect. It was like a mobile reservoir. Of course, water magic could also be used as a means of attack. For example, water arrows. A more powerful mage could directly create a monstrous flood. Of course, the consumption of magic elements was also very high. There were so many magic elements. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, light, darkness, and death. As long as one could sense any one of them, they could become a mage. Mages were very rare. Generally speaking, mages mostly existed in families or in the magic association. In short, they were rare and precious. The client was the Earl's daughter, the eldest daughter of the Rose family, and a mage. If there were no accidents, she would become an outstanding mage. However, things in the world were so unpredictable. Avril's mother's sister, who was also Avril's aunt, brought her family to Yi City to visit her relatives. However, they encountered bandits on the way. These bandits were obviously not weak. Some of the stronger bandit groups had mages in charge, and there were even more than one. Avril's aunt was a mage, and her husband was a multi-elemental mage. This kind of mage's cultivation was slower than others. When others absorbed one type of magic element, he had to absorb several types. When absorbing the same amount, he had to divide the magic elements among everyone and distinguish them. He was considered a half-baked mage. This family brought a team of guards to Yi City. However, they were unlucky and encountered bandits. Moreover, they were very powerful bandits. Although the owner was a mage, there were too many of them. The guards were only ordinary warriors who cultivated combat aura. Unable to defeat the bandits, the husband and wife both died. It was a guard who risked his life to save their only daughter. She came to Yi City and sought refuge with Avril's mother. The head of the family was dead. What would happen to the child? When Avril's mother heard of her sister's tragic death, she was extremely sad. Naturally, she would take in her sister's only child. Although both of them were mages, Mia did not inherit any of their magic. She was just an ordinary person. An ordinary person who couldn't cultivate. This made Avril's mother pity her even more, and she treated Mia like her own daughter. Mia had lost her parents and came to a new environment. She was trembling with fear, but her personality was very good. She was soft and cute, and she called Avril's mother, Auntie, very sweetly. Avril's father was a rather strict man. He didn't mince his words when dealing with clients and was strict with Avril. Avril had this talent. Avril felt a mixture of fear, respect, and love for this couple. However, Mia was different. Even when faced with the Count's cold face, she would still act coquettishly and giggle. After a long time, the Count naturally wouldn't treat this child so coldly. Although Mia couldn't practice magic, she could become a pharmacist or a magic tool maker. Apothecaries were also quite good. They had all kinds of potions. Some could heal injuries, some could increase magic elements for a short period of time, and some could increase one's strength. They were very popular among mages. The Countess sent Mia to the Magic Academy to study potions so that she could be respected as a potions master. Ordinary people would also buy medicine from pharmacists. In short, all roads lead to Rome. Avril didn't have any ill intentions towards this cousin of hers who had a tragic background. Besides, as a mage, Avril herself didn't make things difficult for a cousin who couldn't practice magic. She had the pride of a mage. In addition, her mother would tell Avril that Mia's parents were no longer around. She didn't have any relatives left in this world, so she had to give in to her. Avril let out an "oh" in her heart. If she could give in to her, then so be it. Mia still liked to follow behind Avril and say enviously, "Cousin, it's so good that you can practice magic. I'm so envious." Then her face would be filled with disappointment, "But I can't practice magic." The disappointment will last for a long time. The Countess called her daughter to the front and told her not to mention practicing magic in front of Mia. Not to mention it in front of her. It was already very pitiful that Mia couldn't practice magic. Avril, me? Avril still felt that something was wrong. She felt uncomfortable in her heart. In the future, when Mia mentioned magic in front of Avril, Avril changed the way she said, "Although you don't know magic, you know a lot of other things, such as cooking, dexterity, and so on." But Mia was still not very happy. Avril wanted to meditate to absorb the magical elements, so she couldn't be bothered with Mia. After Mia entered the Magic Academy, she got to know a lot of people, both male and female. The people who entrusted her were more famous in the school and were more talented. When they heard Mia say that she was Avril's cousin, they sighed and said that the two of them had different personalities. Avril was much colder and more arrogant. She made many friends, such as the Imperial Knights, studied with the princes, and people like the Crown Prince and so on. Mia's personality was likable, and with her pitiful background, she naturally attracted people's sympathy. Many people protected her. Compared to these people, Avril, this slightly cold cousin, stood out a little, making people feel that Avril didn't treat Mia well. Gradually, there were rumors in the school that Avril didn't treat Mia well, didn't like Mia, and even bullied Mia at home. Mia would explain every time, but her explanations weren't believed at all. Instead, they expected better from her and said that Mia was a fool. Avril also didn't know where such rumors came from and was a little confused. Actually, it was a coincidence that Mia's friends came to the Earl's residence to look for Mia. Among them were the more noble princes and other children of marquises. It just so happened that it was afternoon tea time, and the Earl's wife asked the two sisters to have afternoon tea with her. Mia picked up the dessert for the Earl's wife to taste, and Avril also picked up the dessert for her mother. To be honest, Mia could make her parents treat her kindly, especially the Earl. Sometimes, he would even laugh in front of Mia, which made Avril a little envious. Avril also subconsciously learned from Mia. Seeing that Mia was giving her mother dessert, she also made it. She usually spent a lot of time on cultivation, and there were servants at home, so there were many things that Avril didn't need to do at all. Avril's job was to cultivate and make her magic more profound. Although Mia was only 13 or 14 years old, she would occasionally make some desserts, making the Earl and his wife very happy in treating her like their own. Chapter 3699. In the eyes of others, Avril was jealous and couldn't tolerate Mia, afraid that Mia would snatch her parents away. On the phone, she was competitive. Whether the rumors were true or not was debatable, but nothing was more real than seeing it with your own eyes. Anyway, it was already confirmed that Avril bullied Mia. Avril even mocked Mia, saying that Mia didn't know magic and only knew how to cook. In school, the students looked at Avril differently. Even the Earl was exasperated and said to Avril, "She's a normal person, you're a magician. Why are you fighting with her? Besides, she doesn't even have parents anymore." Avril was so aggrieved that she wanted to cry. Was it her fault that Mia couldn't cultivate magic? Was it her fault that Mia didn't have parents? Was it her fault that she was a magician? Avril had a lot of opinions about Mia now. In addition to the rumors in school, Avril thought that Mia was badmouthing her behind her back. Avril was furious. When she impulsively confronted Mia, it was as if she had poked a hornet's nest. Those who were protecting Mia all blamed Avril. They said that Mia had never badmouthed her, and she even helped her explain every time. What's so great about being a magician? Who isn't a magician? Even if Mia isn't a magician, she has a noble character as a magician. Avril was dumbfounded. Weren't magicians respected by everyone? Why was her identity as a magician being used against her? I used to think that you were a bit cold and arrogant, but I didn't expect you to be such a person. Mia isn't a magician. Magicians have a short lifespan. You bullied Mia just because you're a magician. Being a magician wasn't a big deal. Mia, who wasn't a magician, was the most amazing. Some people imagined what kind of person you were, but when they saw your true colors, they despised you. They didn't expect you to be this kind of person. You're still the same person. You haven't changed at all. You didn't do anything, but your reputation was ruined. Avril's bad reputation in school made the Earl very unhappy. An outstanding girl like Avril, who was also a magician, would definitely marry into a better family in the future, perhaps even the royal family. Now that things had turned out this way, Avril's future was not very bright. Most of the children in the magic school were from influential families and the royal family. A school was almost the epitome of an empire's influential officials. The count really had a headache. She didn't know why her daughter insisted on making a fuss with a niece who was living under someone else's roof. A girl's heart was so petty. After Ning Shu received the plot, he shrugged his shoulders. Everyone sympathized with the weak and had a hero complex. They were all righteous. In this matter, it was obvious who was the weak one. One was the daughter of a rich family, while the other was the orphan Mia. She couldn't even practice magic. What a pitiful little girl. Even if Mia could cultivate magic, she was still a pitiful little girl. One was soft and cute, while the other was cold and indifferent, petty and jealous. The client was talented and had good looks. If there were no accidents, the client would have a bright future. Sometimes, people liked to see a tall person suddenly being crushed into a pile of mud. It gave them the thrill of destroying a god. Weren't you very proud? Didn't you have this day too? Sympathizing with the weak, being full of righteousness, and having other hidden thoughts caused the client to be so embarrassed. Was the client in the wrong? Probably not. Was Mia in the wrong? She didn't seem to be wrong either. Their personalities created this dispute. The client wasn't completely proud. Since she was proud, she couldn't be bothered to look at Mia and didn't want to get entangled with her. I'm a mage. No matter how much you talk, you can't change this reality. She wouldn't have wasted her magic talent and disappointed her parents. Instead, Mia worked hard to learn potions, and the potions she developed had good effects. Even the royal army took potions from her. Even if she wasn't a mage, she was still a respected pharmacist. Others would even respectfully call her a master. Mia was living under someone else's roof. She probably wanted to please the people around her. She was indeed cute and had a bit of a halo. In this pair, the client seemed to be reaping what he sowed. Ning Shu felt that it was a pity. If the client worked hard to cultivate and reached a certain level of strength, others would still dare to talk. A dispute that seemed to be between girls came to an end just like that. The client lost. Everyone thought that the client was narrow-minded. Well, if the client followed suit, she would probably be said to be going against Mia. If she didn't, she would probably be said to be unfilial and even worse than Mia, an outsider. No matter what, she was very embarrassed. At the end of the day, this was a world where the strong were respected. Even if the client didn't seem to have a good reputation, she was powerful and those rumors were nothing. Unfortunately, her strength didn't improve much. At the beginning, she was still considered to be talented, but she didn't improve. This confirmed those rumors even more. Actually, the client also wanted to work hard to cultivate, but probably because of her mentality or other problems, the effect of her meditation was not as good as before. Being able to maintain her original level was also the result of her hard work. In the end, she lost confidence in herself. A proud girl suddenly encountered such a thing that she couldn't explain clearly. It became a turning point in her life. Mia's arrival broke the previous pattern of their family interactions. This made Avril feel at a loss. Ning Shu looked at his face in the mirror. What a beautiful face, such beautiful eyes. Ning Shu kicked his little feet, returned to the bed, and began to meditate. Meditation was to sense the magical elements flowing in the air. Then, he would absorb the magical elements he needed for his own use and remove the ones he didn't need. This required the support of mental strength. Ning Shu quickly entered meditation. The world suddenly became different. He could sense the darkness. There were all kinds of colorful dots of light, jumping, densely packed. The client was a water mage, so she only needed to absorb the clear water magic elements. Ning Shu used his mental strength to directly pull them together and then merged them into his body. It was cool and comfortable. Since the magic elements entered his body, it was like drinking cold water in the hottest days of the summer. Cultivating magic was a relatively simple thing, just like absorbing spiritual energy. However, the complicated thing about spiritual energy was that it had to remove the elements one didn't need and then absorb them into one's body to store them. This required considerable mental strength. First, one had to sense the magical elements. If one couldn't sense them, they couldn't absorb them. /BK Chapter 3700. Secondly, one had to have a body that could contain magical elements, or everything would be for naught. Please, enter this station. That was why mages were so rare. Otherwise, Mia wouldn't have been so dejected. In the end, Mia became a respected apothecary. She probably wanted to show that she wouldn't abandon him, and so what if Avril had talent as a mage? The two of them were a pair, and Mia was even more likable. Ning Shu immersed himself in absorbing magical elements. Ning Shu found this cultivation method quite interesting. Cultivating ultimate martial arts was simple and crude. It required a high concentration of mental power. Since Avril had such talent in magic, she naturally had to continue cultivating water-type magic. If someone badmouthed her in the future, it didn't matter. He would get some water to wash his mouth. Some things were just so inexplicable, and so inexplicable. Mia also didn't badmouth her client in front of others, and Avril didn't bully Mia. Perhaps it was because Avril looked a little domineering, and Mia was too soft and cute. She looked like she was easy to bully. They said that Avril didn't care about Mia. Was Mia a baby? Did she need others to tell her what to do? Was she an idiot? Didn't she know that she was hungry? It was indeed a little inexplicable. After cultivating for a while, Ning Shu felt a little bloated. He had probably reached his limit. If he continued cultivating, it would be a burden on his body. Ning Shu stopped cultivating. He put on his shoes and prepared to go out and eat something. He looked in the mirror. His skin was moist. How nice. It was probably water-type magic that nourished the skin. Absorbing a certain magical element would have a subtle effect on one's personality and body. For example, the fire element would make one's personality fiery. Ning Shu opened the door. The servant guarding outside hurriedly asked Ning Shu, "Miss Avril, would you like to eat in the room or in the hall?" Generally speaking, clients preferred to eat in their own rooms. The maid had a head of dense and pure blonde hair, which was braided into a simple thick braid that hung to one side. She was wearing a loose skirt. She was a beautiful girl. Ning Shu thought for a moment and said, "Let's go to the hall and eat with mother and father." The maid nodded and hurriedly went to prepare. Ning Shu brushed his hair and tidied up his clothes before heading towards the hall. The Earl's mansion occupied a large area and had a large garden. Inside, there were all kinds of flowers carefully cultivated by gardeners. There were butterflies and bees surrounding the flowers. He had a noble air about him. Ning Shu stood at the top of the stairs and listened to the voices below. The long dining table was filled with sumptuous dishes. When the white candles were lit, they would emit a fragrance. The fresh flowers in the vase were fresh and glistening. The Earl, his wife, and Mia were eating with cutlery in their hands. He didn't know what they were talking about, but they were all smiling. Seeing Ning Shu come downstairs, the Countess took the lead and said, "Have you eaten in the room? Every time you come over to eat, come over quickly." The Countess was very gentle with Ning Shu. The Count was a man with snow-white skin and curly red hair. His entire body was exquisite, even the carvings on his buttons were especially exquisite. He was a very particular man, a noble. He looked at Ning Shu and asked, "How's your meditation going?" Ning Shu sat down. "It's going well. Don't worry, father. Ning Shu felt that it was reasonable for the couple to be resentful of the client for failing to live up to their expectations. The couple was strict with the client because the client was their biological child and there was no gap in their education. They had few requirements for Mia. On the one hand, it was out of pity. On the other hand, she wasn't their biological child after all. If they were really strict with her, it would be said that the Earl was bullying an orphan. In the couple's hearts, Avril had a bright future. It wasn't worth it to compete with Mia. In their hearts, their daughter was of course the best. That was why they couldn't figure it out. This was undoubtedly using exquisite porcelain to hit a rock. It wasn't worth it at all. Yet, his daughter had done so, and had even wasted her own magic. What was she after? Normal people couldn't figure it out. But things were so inexplicable. It was probably because Avril and Mia were a pair, and Mia was so tenacious. The Earl was very satisfied with this daughter of his. She took the initiative to cultivate every day. In school, she wasn't weak. Seeing the Earl and his wife treat Avril so well, Mia couldn't help but think of her lost parents. At the same time, she was a little envious of Avril, who could cultivate magic. The moment she appeared, her uncle and aunt focused their attention on her. Ning Shu cut a piece of turkey and ate it in small bites. He sized up Mia opposite him. Mia was really adorable. She had aqua blue hair, and her skin was so delicate that it looked like it could be broken by the wind. She gave off a delicate yet charming feeling. A hint of sadness appeared on her face again. She was probably thinking about magic again. Mia still wanted to become a magician and encouraged herself. Even if she wasn't a magician, she had to become someone who was respected. Since Ning Shu was here, he wouldn't let that incriminating thing happen. After dinner, Mia got up from her seat, and said mysteriously, "Uncle, Auntie, I made something. Have a taste." The Earl and his wife nodded and said okay. Ning Shu's expression was indifferent. He didn't say anything. Mia felt that her cousin looked even more unapproachable. Mia came out with dessert and black tea. She poured black tea for the three of them and said expectantly, "Try it." The Earl and his wife tasted the dessert first and then had a sip of the black tea. They couldn't help but say, "Not bad. You actually have such skills." Mia said with a smile, "I learned it at home." Ning Shu followed the crowd and had a sip. He didn't say anything. The Earl's wife still hoped that the two sisters could get along harmoniously. She asked her daughter, "Avril, what do you think?" Ning Shu said, "Not bad." However, Ning Shu changed the topic and said to Mia, "Cousin, don't do these things in the future." Mia was stunned for a moment, her face full of confusion. She asked, "Why?" "These things are done by special servants. It's not your turn to do these things. Also, if other people know, they'll say that the Earl's family is bullying you. My parents treat you as their biological daughter. Even I haven't done these things. How can you do these things?" Mia hurriedly explained with an uneasy expression, No one bullied me. I did it willingly, and no one forced me. Uncle and aunt are very good to me. No one will think that the Count's residence is bullying me, /BK. Chapter 3701. Mia was so anxious that she was sweating, and there were small beads of sweat on the tip of her nose. She looked very flustered and uneasy, making others feel uneasy. The Countess thought of her lost sister and said, "Mia, don't be afraid. Your cousin is thinking for you. Don't do these things in the future." Mia lowered her head and said dejectedly, "I like to do these things." Ning Shu sighed and said, "We all know your feelings, but others don't. Besides, you can't do these things according to your heart. Those things have servants to do. If you do their work and leave them with nothing to do, they will feel that the master will fire them." Mia looked around at the servants who were waiting on her. Some of them were looking at her strangely. Mia felt a little wronged. She had never thought of snatching anyone's work. She just wanted to share her things. Mia was skillful and liked to make some pastries, desserts, or innovative toast when she had nothing to do. She would bring them to school and share them with her classmates or friends. Mia often did these things, causing everyone in school to think that Mia often did these things. The Countess treated Mia as a maid. The Countess probably had the common problem of nobles, and that was that she valued her family's reputation more than anything else. After hearing Ning Shu's words, she didn't approve of Mia doing these things that servants should do. Nobles had to act like nobles. Besides, which noble family didn't have servants? Why would they need an orphan girl to do these things? They would think that they were bullying an orphan girl. The Countess said to Mia, "Don't do these things in the future. Tell the servants what you want to eat." Mia still wanted to say something, but the Countess shook her head at Mia, asking her to shut up. Mia was a little down. She knew that her aunt and uncle were good to her, but she still felt uncomfortable. The meal ended in an inexplicable atmosphere. Ning Shu wanted to return to his room, and Mia followed behind Ning Shu, wanting to say something but hesitating. Ning Shu turned around and asked, "Cousin, what's the matter?" Mia said with some distress, "Cousin, no one forced me to do these things. I was willing to do it. Can you tell uncle about it?" "Cousin, I beg you." The nimble Mia really loved it. However, Ning Shu said directly, "Sometimes, we really do things as we please. Father is an earl. He definitely doesn't want others to say that he mistreats a descendant. You have to understand him. Besides, you should be a good young lady, just like me." When Mia saw that Ning Shu had entered the house, she knew that there was no room for negotiation. The only time she could do it was to concoct potions in school. Mia was very depressed about this. The next day, she went to school with Ning Shu. In the carriage, Mia couldn't help but sigh. Ning Shu ignored her and looked at the situation outside. The empire was very prosperous. There were many peddlers on the streets. There were even peddlers selling beast men. The beast men were very strong and were good at work. There were also some special potions and magic crystals. There were also people who could control magical beasts. This world was very beautiful. The Magic Academy was very big. As long as one was a magician, they could enter, regardless of whether they were commoners or nobles. However, most of the magicians were from nobles. Whether it was resources or talents, it was undeniable that the upper class of nobles had more. There were many carriages at the magnificent school gate. These carriages were all pulled by magical beasts. They were more powerful than ordinary horses and ran faster. For example, the more flashy dragon knights rode on giant dragons. There were also dragons of Asian descent. They had the bloodline of giant dragons but were not as powerful as giant dragons. There were totems of various families on the carriages. For example, the Rose family had a picture of a rose. Ning Shu got off the carriage and Mia followed. A loud voice rang out. "Hi, Mia, over here." At the same time, a brown-haired girl was waving at Mia. She seemed very happy to see Mia. Mia walked towards the girl. Ning Shu had some impression of this girl. She seemed to be called Rita. She was also studying potions and was Mia's good friend. She was at the forefront of Mia's career. She thought that Mia was being bullied by her client. Rita probably empathized with Mia. She couldn't practice magic and switched to studying potions. She thought that Mia was like her, someone who was being mocked by her family. And Mia was even more miserable than her. She didn't even have a family. However, Rita was not someone to be trifled with. If someone bullied her, she would bully them back. Mia walked towards Rita listlessly. Seeing her like this, Rita couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong? Why are you so depressed?" Mia waved her hand. Nothing. What do you mean nothing? Rita stomped her feet. She pulled Mia through the crowd and walked towards Ning Shu. Mia was a little confused. She asked, Rita, what are you doing? Of course I'm going to look for Avril, you fool. Avril, wait a minute, Rita called out to Ning Shu loudly. Everyone around them stopped in their tracks and looked towards them. It was as if they wanted to watch a show. Ning Shu stopped in his tracks. He turned around and looked at the agitated and confused Mia. Ning Shu asked, what's the matter? Rita was speechless. How cold and arrogant. Rita questioned Ning Shu with a sharp voice. Did you bully Mia? Ning Shu didn't say anything. It was Mia who came back to her senses and quickly explained, this has nothing to do with Avril. It has nothing to do with her. The surrounding people gathered and surrounded the three of them. However, they kept a certain distance. It was the best location for the spectators. Rita couldn't help but say, sometimes, when you give in, others will only take a mile after taking an inch. Ning Shu looked at Rita with a half-smile. He crossed his arms and looked arrogant. He said coldly, are you really my cousin's friend? Rita was doubted and retorted, of course I'm Mia's friend. Mia nodded. Cousin, Rita is my friend. They studied potions together and Rita took good care of her. Ning Shu's expression suddenly became a little helpless. With a doting look, he waved to Mia. Cousin, come here. Rita grabbed Mia's hand and didn't let her go over. She looked indignant. She probably felt that Ning Shu could get Mia to come and go as he wished. Rita couldn't help but say, are you bullying her just because she doesn't have any relatives? Mia blinked and was a little confused. Ning Shu didn't care if Mia came over or not. She said coldly, who told you that Mia doesn't have any relatives? Her mother is my mother's sister, and there's also her maternal grandfather's family. Mia is my cousin. In terms of relationship, I'm much closer to her than you are. Chapter 3702. What kind of illusion was it that Mia had no family and was all alone? If not for her family, how could Mia live in the Earl's residence? Who would care about someone who had nothing to do with them? He didn't know how this idea was rooted in people's hearts, but they felt that Mia was all alone in the world. Since you are Mia's friend, you should believe her words. You don't even believe her, how can we be friends? Ning Shu sneered. Are you sure you are standing up for Mia and not for your own selfish desires, such as your hatred and longing for a mage? You are using righteous buts to express the indignation in your heart. Since we are friends, then you should believe my cousin's words and not judge me, a mage, for your own feelings. Ask me now if Mia was bullied in my house, and what did I bully her about? I also don't want to bear the reputation of bullying my cousin. Ning Shu didn't have any feelings for Mia, but he was dissatisfied with Rita. You are not my cousin's friend at all. You are with my cousin because you want to use my cousin to attack me, a mage. You want to see me, a mage, embarrass myself. You have a low moral character and want to prove that I am only a so-so as a mage. You are so twisted. Rita's face turned red from Ning Shu's words, and she retorted, I am not as dirty as you say. Ning Shu made an oh sound. You are not dirty, but you think of others as dirty. I am really worried that my cousin will be friends with you like this. Please stay away from my cousin. The surrounding people's expressions were a little strange as they watched the show quietly. Ning Shu felt a few pairs of eyes looking down at him from above. Ning Shu used his mental strength to scan and realized that it was a group of people who were dressed extravagantly and had extraordinary auras. This group of people were probably the most respected people in this school, including the princes and the people at the top of the hierarchy. This group of people was very friendly and doting towards Mia. Mia was not a little pitiful, she was clearly a little cutie who was doted on by everyone. However, everyone felt that she was a pitiful little girl who needed love and care. Whatever the upper echelons liked or disliked, the lower echelons would follow suit and flock to catch up with the trend. King Chu had a slender waist. This was the reason why people in the palace would starve to death. Most of the clients had made it clear to these people that Avril was not a person of good character and would seek revenge for the slightest mistake. There was no room for an orphan who had nothing and no dignity as a mage. Being hated by the higher-ups and nobles would make the marriage of the client much more difficult. Marrying her meant that he would be mocked by others, and his family's reputation would be affected. He would be ostracized, and that included the imperial family. Whether it was a tangible loss or an intangible loss, it would make people stay away from the client. Ning Shu looked upstairs, narrowed his eyes, and curled his lips. A sense of justice. Ning Shu could not be bothered with the group of people upstairs. He said to Mia, "Cousin, next time you have to be careful when you find friends. Don't associate with people who have bad intentions." Ning Shu turned to leave. Rita reached out to grab Ning Shu, but Ning Shu flung her away. Rita was thrown back a few steps by Ning Shu and almost fell. She barely steadied herself. Ning Shu looked at her with a stern expression. "Are you going to offend a mage? Think about the consequences." Since they were talking about a mage's dignity and character, then a mage's dignity could not be offended. On one hand, they were questioning her character and dignity as a mage, and on the other, they were trampling on the dignity of a mage. How intoxicating. Rita's expression turned ugly. At this moment, Avril's face seemed to overlap with the faces of her siblings at home. It made her feel the evil intentions of the world. Ning Shu did not care about Rita and went upstairs to the classroom. Mia could not help but tug at Rita. Rita came back to her senses and asked Mia, "Do you think I have such dirty intentions to be friends with you?" She did not think so much at all. Avril was really too annoying. When she said that, her actions were completely distorted. In the future, whenever she fought for justice for Mia, it would seem like it was for selfish reasons. It was really infuriating. Mia shook her head. "I know Rita is doing it for me. She has good intentions, but cousin really did not bully me." "Look, she obviously looks down on you," Rita said. Mia did not say anything. She was not very close to her cousin. When her parents were still around, she would play with her friends in the room, and even sleep with her close friends on the bed. But when she came to the Earl's mansion, she almost never went to her cousin's room. Moreover, her cousin wanted to meditate in her room, and no one was allowed to disturb her. She did not look down on her. At most, they were not close. The matter ended, and the onlookers dispersed. School life began. Ning Shu entered the classroom, found her seat, and sat down. She continued to ignore everyone and took out a magic storybook to read. Ning Shu read with great interest. "Hey, Avril." A tall and sturdy man knocked on Ning Shu's desk. Ning Shu looked up from his book and looked at him coldly. "What is it?" Although this man was tall and sturdy, he was handsome. He had golden hair and deep eyes. He carried a huge sword on his back. His tall and sturdy build was because he cultivated battle force. His father was a general of the empire and had fought with the Beastman Empire for many years. He was respected. And Avril had been studying with the princes and the crown prince for many years. He was also there to protect these descendants of the royal family. He was also there to take over his father's position in the future. Avril was also very popular with the girls in school. Ning Shu looked at him coldly. Speaking of which, Wakel had always protected Mia under his wings. Since he was Mia's protector, it was only natural that he would be unhappy with someone as narrow-minded and vengeful as her. These descendants of the nobles were a group, and Mia was the favorite of this group. If anything happened to Mia, this bastard would rush to the front. Ning Shu looked at him coldly. Was he going to threaten her and tell her not to bully Mia? Avril was confused. He was clearly the one looking down on this girl, but the coldness in her eyes made him feel as if she could jump up and smash his head open at any moment. This feeling rose in his heart, and the battle force in Avril's body began to circulate faster. Ning Shu held back and asked again, "What's the matter?" Avril wanted to say something, but he suddenly forgot. Avril turned around mechanically and left Ning Shu's desk. Ning Shu almost rolled his eyes. Crazy. Crazy. This time, he did not say anything about not bullying Mia. He left just like that. It was a bit surprising. To view the new chapter, please go to mobile address. To view the new chapter, please go to mobile address. You're tuning into the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.